Makes me want to figure out how to get the picture of. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of Law and Order. Me, robnoerr, not a lawyer. Oh, buddy Avarice popping on.
What's going on?
Hey, Avarice, what's up, man?
I didn't know it was gonna pop me to the screen. Usually drops me below.
Oh, it's all right. I'll pop you back. Avarice just had a baby.
So Avarice has better shit to do than talk to us.
Yes.
Look at that. Congratulations, Papa.
Yes, it's amazing. But yeah, my good friend Avarice, a new father today. Wonderful day.
That's the best feeling in the world, man. When you got your newborn lying on your chest like that, that's winning at life. Let's put it that way.
It is. It certainly is. So, but before we get to that, we got 2 hours of Law and Order. So we have several topics to get to today, referencing political sort of legal stories that we see in, and love them or hate them with Trump in office, there's never a shortage of them. It feels like we could do this show for 40 hours a week and we still wouldn't be able to cover everything. So, Ryan, it's great to see you today. How you doing this fine day?
I'm doing great. Not as good as Avarice, but pretty good.
I know. No feeling like that. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks to the kind support of your fans and I guess the guys over at Sitch and Adams show where I did a spot recently, I'm officially a YouTube partner. So that happened pretty fast. I'm excited about it. So
that is absolutely amazing. And look at this over on your channel. Oatbox says, "Congratulations to him and Ryan for making 500." Congratulations, man.
Look at that.
The first ones are the hardest to get, man. So onward and upward from here. So congratulations. I'm glad to hear. And I hope everyone goes over to your channel and subs. And I hope the people watching you come over and sub.
Yeah, I promised them that I would do a griftathon once I got monetized where I would celebrate properly. I'm not doing it tonight because I got to do legal analysis. So I have a little beverage, but not the big bottle of Japanese whiskey I bought to celebrate the occasion. I'll save that for a chill stream.
That's funny.
Where I can just babble incoherently without.
I was gifted this. I don't drink much anymore, but I was gifted this Knob Creek single barrel at DebateCon. So I did crack it up and have one little sip. Some of these people, some of these online people, they're like professional drinkers. They be hitting it hard. So, for me, it was like, nope. Just a little sip for me.
Just a little tipple.
Just a little sip. So we got, there's a lot that we could potentially talk about. I think we narrowed it down to 2 topics. And obviously, if the audience has things that they would like to input, the best way to get that out is a super chat. We either read it if it fits in with what we're talking about, or we'll have time at the end. So any questions you have for Ryan or myself regarding any legal matter politically, we're probably not going to answer like, I have a question about my, permit to build my new shed on my property. I don't know if that's the point of this show, but yeah, that's sort of the game. Now, today, I think the first story that we planned on starting out with, and it's a doozy, and it's going to get bigger as we go, and that's birthright citizenship. The news, quite possibly, if this would rule a certain way, would be the most impactful thing to happen under either of Trump's term as president. And so the fact that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case on Trump's challenge to birthright citizenship is really going to be an insane news cycle as it goes on. What's your initial feelings? Are you surprised that the court agreed to hear this? And what's your sort of initial take on this?
Wow. I mean, you're right. This is a doozy. And it would be up there. I mean, I think presidential immunity, overturning Roe v. Wade, and then this would be the big one. But I wanted to stay up front. This one, I think when Roe v. Wade went up, or when presidential immunity went up, people who were like in the Federalist Society like me, or like originalists who read the court, we were all thinking, yeah, this is going to get overturned. Yeah, presidential immunity, like we understand the arguments. This one is on a razor's edge. Like there are really good arguments on both sides. It's not clear what the court's going to do. And I think we're going to get in the weeds on that. We know that there's the 3 liberal justices are opposed. And we know that because they've gone on record already in related matters that we can talk about. So we know how they vote, how they're going to vote. But I don't know whether there's 5 or 6 votes to get rid of birthright citizenship. It's going to be real close. And I'm sure we're going to dig into it tonight because it's a doozy. And in terms of the import, my God, it changes the entire immigration policy. If that's gone, it changes everything.
The reason I think that if this was overturned, it would be more of an effect than Roe v. Wade is Roe v. Wade just enshrined something into law that once it was removed, each state was able to just have their law and do what they saw fit. This would be sweeping. It's not like the states would be like with abortion, well, we'll still allow it in our state. Roe v. Wade didn't say you can't do abortion. It took away sort of a federal right. This would be different in that I think that it would be shocking. The impact that it would have, it would remake sort of the immigration policy in the United States, probably in a most staunchly significant way since, I don't know, like what was the name of the one that everyone always talks about there in the 60s? It would be that significant. And, you know, my initial reaction is I don't think it'll be overturned. I wonder if there's some nuance that maybe they'll have like specific classes of people or something to that degree. But I think that it'll be a 6-3 or a 5-4 that will uphold that anyone that is born in the United States is a citizen thereof. Let's start with this. Can you give the case for sort of what the current law is in the 14th Amendment? And then we'll start with, you can give the sort of case for the overturning it and then the other side of it. So let's start. What is the law right now?
So, and I think this is the most fair way to do it. And I'm signaling to the audience, neither Rob nor I are in debate bro mode right now.
Right.
Like, you might see either of us argue this and we'll be debatey later. So if you're confused about the tone shift, right now we're just trying to be fair and informative. And that's what we're doing. So the 14th Amendment, it really starts with the text. And that's why the argument, I think you're right, Rob, like it getting overturned seems to have, if you were going to say which side has the upper hand, called a 60-40, 70-30, they seem to have the stronger case. And that's just the text of the 14th Amendment. So for those of you who aren't history buffs, in the 1860s, Civil War is over. Now there's this problem that's happening where you have, ex-slaves and they're having children. And the question is, are their children citizens? And that creates a big problem because typically, there were questions about the citizenships of slaves, and they want to clarify this. They want to say, no, the war is over. Civil rights, this has come to an end. We're no longer we're not treating black people like slaves. They're citizens. Let's clarify this. And there's a constitutional amendment that clarifies that to this extent. And the text is pretty clear. All persons born or naturalized, so born being the key word, in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So I think the starting argument for the don't overturn it side is the natural reading. If you're born here and you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof, you are a citizen. And let's just run through that. Let's say a woman who's pregnant comes over the border illegally. She's in the United States. She has her kid. Was the kid born here? Absolutely. Is she subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? Well, she's here illegally. We could arrest her. We could prosecute her for a crime. We can make her pay taxes. We can put her in jail if she does something bad. She does certainly seem to be under the jurisdiction of our laws. So just on the plain text, they have a really strong starting point. And I think that's where their argument begins. And then they get into the case law.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's an easier case to see the defensive side of it, right? Where it's like, look, if we just plainly read. Now, there's a couple questions I have with that. But before we get to sort of the legal ramifications of this, let's just look at it from a moral perspective. Now, there's no secret. I would love to see this overturned. I really would. And I've had my heart hardened on immigration and want mass deportations, etc. However, if I'm playing devil's advocate, and I think this is a legitimate argument that one could have, what do you say to that kid that was born here? Let's say it's a woman fleeing Guatemala, right? And she comes here and is born here. What if the Guatemalan government says, no, we don't accept this kid. We don't accept this kid as a citizen. He was not born here. Whatever our crazy laws are in our crazy country, we just say, no, you're not a citizen here. You weren't born here. Sorry. Your mom fled here or from here. Nope, not a citizen. And if the United States says you're also not a citizen, then where's that child? What's its home country at that point? And so you can see this sort of moral conundrum here. It's like, you do have a heart for this child that's like, wait a minute, this child did nothing wrong. now finds itself in a situation that, grows up in a legal household, again, no fault of his own, until he's older to see, and now all of a sudden reaches adulthood. Maybe he's been here 18 years with his illegal mother. What's he do? All of a sudden, he can't be a citizen of the United States. He has to go back to Guatemala, a country he's never been to, that might refuse to accept him. So it's an interesting moral conundrum.
Yeah, and what you're referring to is the problem of statelessness. It's possible that if you got rid of the 14th Amendment as we understand it, or have understood it up till now, that a child like that would have no country of their own. They'd be stateless. And that's a very dangerous situation to find yourself in, especially of not being a problem of your own making. Now, for whatever it's worth, the Heritage Foundation did some analysis on this, and their analysis suggests that this is not really a substantial problem. Like in reality, it's pretty clear that, like, if a woman was immigrating here illegally and gave birth, that her country of origin is in fact going to take her child in some enormous amount of cases. Grassroots hegemon, by the way, thank you so much, buddy. Holy
look at this, man. Newly monetized, Ryan. Look at this. $100 says I was busy harassing channels. I'm on Live and Learn. Happy 500. No, that's amazing. And you deserve it, man. I'm very happy. And thank you so much for the donation to Ryan there. It's really appreciated. No one's worked harder since you've started really putting effort into this. I see you're doing channels all over the place. You're working with me. You're doing Sitch and Adam. You're doing a bunch of debates with high profile people. So, man, I'm so excited for you. And I'm happy that people are supporting you. It's really amazing.
Yeah, this is actually the first stream where I've had super chats enabled, so I've deeply appreciated. I don't normally interrupt a spot, but it was
a little different today, though. I think
$100. I got to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that there's an empirical question about how much harm would really be caused by that, and then I think the other question that is an important one to flag is that just because, let's imagine this case for the understanding of the 14th Amendment as giving birthright citizenship gets overturned. That's just about what the Constitution dictates. You could still pass a federal law that gives birthright citizenship to a broader class of people. This case is just about, does the Constitution require it, not what the federal government should or should not do. So it's entirely possible that we could end up in a scenario where this gets overturned and we still give birthright citizenship to a lot or most people. That would just be a question of federal policy at that point rather than constitutional law.
Yes, I think that although our legislative seems to be slow to do anything, I think if this was overturned, you would see some movement on getting something enshrined. The question here's another question I have, because I see someone in your chat that's saying that basically jurisdiction, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, they interpret it differently than what you suggested. I know you're going to make that argument for the other side, but before we get there, I have a question that I've been thinking about a lot that's sort of more of a framework question, and this case really illustrates it, right? And that question is this: what if we know that the plain written words of an amendment, of something in the Constitution, etc., right, is so far afoul of how it's being interpreted, but it technically fits in the plain words? Is there room for a court to be like, look, yes, if we literally interpret the words as said, this is what this means, but clearly the framers didn't intend this, the people that created this didn't intend it, so we're going to make some sort of judicial adjustment? Or is there never a case for courts to do that?
So this is one of the wildest, just like it's such a crazy part of this case. And by the way, Grassroots just dropped another.
Yes, let's do one real quick. Another 100 said this is the wrench pay for play communism money. The other one was just me being proud of you and grateful for your message. Thank you so much, Grassroots.
Yeah, I mean, Grassroots, thank you, man. So much. Thank you so much. Unbelievable support. Thank you, buddy. So if the conservative wing of the Supreme Court were living constitutionalists, they could very easily say, that's not what they intended. Let's do living constitutionalism. Let's interpret the word to mean whatever we think it should mean. And then they say it's a bad policy, knock it out. A conservative living constitutionalist bench could settle this in a day. It'd be done. But they're not. They're originalists. And originalists don't, at least if you take them at their word, and I do as an originalist, they don't care about the intent. They care about the original public meaning, which means you have to look at the history. You have to look at what was happening right before it was enacted and what happened after it was enacted, and make a case that the word subject to the jurisdiction doesn't mean what we would understand it to mean today. That's not how people understood it at that time. But that's different than navel gazing and saying, "Oh, I don't think they intended this," right? If they could just do intent, it would be very easy. But they really can't without being contrary to their own jurisprudence. So, because the Supreme Court's originalists, they're going to have to do a pretty deep historical inquiry, which is going to start, of course, with Wong Kim Ark, which we're going to talk about, which is like the most important case in the area, a few other cases, and then look at, what were people saying about this? What was this country doing about this at the time it was ratified in 1868? And then build a historical case around that.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? I agree with you 100%. That's how I view it as well. Of course, like, it's shady to say this, but this has to be true. We're all fallible, and that wouldn't exclude Supreme Court justices, right? And so there's always room for being incorrect or for bias, etc. If you are someone who is an originalist, like, you're trying to limit that as much as possible and taking your personal feelings out of it. Whereas opposed, if you're someone who's like sort of the living constitution type person, you could basically just be an advocate for whatever political side that you have. And how do you eliminate that? You can't. The judges could basically do whatever they want within an extent, right? And so it puts my side, when I said I'll be unabashedly conservative, I don't care. Yeah, although it is true that there might be more justices on my side, it seems that they're trying their best to be less political and instead be like, this is what we truly believe that the text says, and that's how it's always been. And if that goes against our guy, so be it. Like, that's it. That's how we do it. Whereas, like, not to bag on someone, although she deserves it, when you look at, like, Justice Jackson, I mean, her partisanship is just rank and embarrassing, and how she, like, speaks there in the court and the questions she asks and what have. And I think the other justices know it. But from that perspective, hey, that's good for your side. If you're like, hey, she'll do whatever we want, get Trump at any cost, promulgate the Democratic message. So
Can I give you just a quick aside, and then we'll get back to the meat of the case. In one of the earlier cases that led up to this, it was called DHS v. DVD. It was a birthright citizenship case that went up to the Supreme Court on a preliminary injunction, right? And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't enjoin, and sent it back down. But they did it with an unsigned order. And the liberal justices dissented, all three of them, Kagan, Sotomayor, Jackson, and to your point about partisanship. And they all said the same thing. They said, look, the Supreme Court could have taken this case earlier. They should have taken it earlier. And birthright citizenship should be maintained. We would have preferred to keep it. So we dissent. Don't send it back down. Okay, that's fair. That's what you do, right? It goes back down, and the district court ignores the Supreme Court and enjoins the case anyway. And when they do it, they cite the dissent. And they say, see, the dissent said we could keep going. You can't do that. That's a crazy thing. Like,
right.
For those who aren't lawyers, to say the obvious, district courts are not allowed to ignore the Supreme Court in the same way a private is not allowed to ignore a general. Like, this is not up to you, right? Like, it's not your choice. So it goes back up to the Supreme Court, and they say, oh my God, like, Supreme Court, tell them they have to follow your order. This is crazy, right? Kagan, to her credit, writes an opinion where she says, look, I think the original decision was wrong, but even though it's wrong, district courts still have to follow it.
Correct.
What are we talking about here? Jackson and Sotomayor dissent again and say, yeah, the lower court shouldn't have followed the order of the Supreme Court. It was wrong, which is crazy. Like, in terms of raw partisanship, it's the most partisan thing I've ever seen the Supreme Court do. So, I mean, I have to agree with you there. There's some partisanship on the court. But let's be fair. Alito is as partisan to the right as you could get. Like, the man's pretty partisan. But there are, I would say, Justice Thomas, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Barrett. These are rock-ribbed originalists. And Kavanaugh and Roberts, they're a little bit more flexible. But I don't know. Like, I think there's going to be good arguments that some of these justices might side with the liberal and form a majority that way.
What do you think? So let's get into it. So the meat, this is my layman, not an attorney. The meat of this is, if we bring this back up, is going to be, as we've already talked here, and you tell me if you think I'm wrong, but this was my right here, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. To me, that's going to be the meat of the argument. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And the core argument that Trump has made through his Solicitor General is, look, it has two terms, born here and subject to the jurisdiction. If the second one doesn't do anything, it's surplusage. We don't interpret the Constitution that way. It has to do something, right? But the majority, or the people who support birthright citizenship, have a good counter argument here, where they're saying, well, it does do something. It excludes
diplomats,
the children of diplomats, and it excludes prior to the Native American citizenship, it excluded Native Americans living on reservations who didn't pay taxes, right? So it did carve out some things. It just doesn't carve out very many things. It would also exclude, for example, if we were invaded by Canada and the Mounties were like raping and pillaging while they were here, any kids that were the result of the rampage of the Mounties would not be citizens.
Even if the mother was American?
I believe not. I think typically if you're in a wartime, I'd have to look at that again, but I think in a wartime scenario that gets excluded. That's a good question if the mother was American. It certainly would be excluded if the Mounties had a battleship and there were women on the battleship and they gave birth while they were occupying Manhattan or something.
Right.
That would definitely be excluded. I actually don't. That's a good question about the rape and pillaging scenario. I'd have to look that one up again. I don't want to put too much mustard on that.
So I've heard that in the most shallow of ways, this exact exchange, right? That, yeah, it wouldn't make sense the way that we write things, the framers, the people who created the amendments, etc. They're not putting superfluous words, right? You don't say, people that are big and tall in a law and then say big means the same thing as tall.
Yeah.
You don't say it has to mean something distinct or else it's redundant, and they're not going to do that. There clearly had to be a separate meaning for them to put that in there. And so that's the argument for the side of like, see, jurisdiction proves that it's not just being born here. And the other side says, I didn't hear the Indian thing, but I did hear the diplomat, where it's like, well, let's say that, the envoy from the King of France is here, right? And he brings his wife with him across the sea. And, we also have to remember, it sounds stupid to say this, but it's important. When was the 14th passed?
1868.
68. Okay. So it's not like, it's sort of weird now because I view the world through the lens of like 2020, right? 2025, where it's like, I can hop in a jet and be to Europe by the end of the day, right? Not today for me, but you get the point, right? Back then it was like more of a serious traveling situation. And so you may come over as a dignitary with your wife, with your girlfriend, whatever. She may give birth here. It would be absurd to assume that like diplomats from like a country like France or Spain could come over, give birth, and now it's like dual citizenship. Now my son's a legitimate citizen of the United States. Oh, by the way, I want him to run for office. Like it would be sort of, sure, it would be easy to see from the perspective of people who in their lifetime had seen like the War of 1812. We don't want that. We're not trying to have sort of foreigners be able to, that are involved in politics, get a foothold with citizenship in the United States. But it is an interesting point. I think that the intent was slaves. I think that that's my understanding of it. And so I couldn't tell you though. My gut feeling is that the creators of this amendment would be appalled to see how this has been abused to some degree, but I don't know. Maybe they fully did intend that.
That's why this is so fascinating for like people like me who are constitutional originalists. Because look, like if I wasn't an originalist, I could make the easiest argument in the world. Go exactly what you said. Read the slaughterhouse cases, which is another Supreme Court case. It clearly says the purpose of this was the children of slaves. That's not up for debate. Everyone knows that was the purpose of it. And then you look at the world in 1868, this wasn't a big issue. There was not a big question of like birth tourism. The federal government wasn't even really enforcing immigration in a strict way until the Chinese Exclusion Act came later. But like this just wasn't actually a thing. Nobody cared about this issue when they were passing it. So from an intent perspective, you would say, well, they didn't mean it to mean this, and it's bad policy. I'm a living constitutionalist. Voila, I fix it, right? It'd be very easy. But for an originalist, this is a tougher case because you have to say, well, what they intended doesn't really matter. How it's understood is what matters. So then you got to zoom right in, and you do have this case, Wong Kim Ark, which is one you're going to hear about endlessly, which ruled, and we can get into it more technically, but I'm going to frame it the way
Sure.
that opponents of birthright citizenship will frame it. It said, A, that somebody who was looking for birthright citizenship, Mr. Wong Kim Ark, could have it. And B, it said that the Constitution incorporated the UK's common law practice of birthright citizenship, which was the most expansive practice. And the UK didn't even get rid of it until years and years, I think it was in the 1900s. So they've had this for a long time. And if you read that common law UK practice of birthright citizenship into the Constitution, then of course it was understood to mean you get birthright citizenship. And that's kind of the core argument there, where they say, look, the jurisdiction clause, it does mean something. It doesn't mean a lot, but it means something. And we have Wong Kim Ark, which gave us this clear case law. We have the common law of England. And then for 127 years, we've been interpreting it this way pretty much nonstop, right? So what are you guys talking about when you want to overturn the apple cart? Like, there's a clear tradition stretching back to 1600 England on our side, right? Which is, like, I'm not going to lie, that's a good argument. It's a good argument.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that as a matter of policy, I would like to see this overturned, but I am persuaded. And I think that that's why you'll see a close decision, a 6-3 or 5-4, in my opinion, that will end up going that way. However, I am interested to hear what the opposite is, like what the other side will make, especially given the case you just cited there. What will their claim be? Like, why shouldn't that precedent apply?
Well, so this is where it gets interesting if you like technical details, right? So in Wong Kim Ark, the guy was of Chinese descent, and he was trying to re-enter the country, and the question was, are you a citizen? Because at that time, Chinese nationals were being excluded under the Chinese Exclusion Act. So, but if he's a citizen, he can come back in, and he had been born here, right? Now, the case, over and over and over again, the Supreme Court pointed out that his parents, who were Chinese citizens when they were here, were long-term domiciliaries of the United States. They lived here and they intended to remain here. They had a long established history with the US. They were permanent residents, even though they were not citizens. So the distinction that Trump's lawyers and the Heritage Foundation types are drawing is that case, it should be read to be about those facts. They're saying, yeah, if somebody, let's say somebody came here illegally, they've been here for 25 years, they've been paying taxes, they have a kid. All right, you got us. Wong Kim Ark, clear precedent, they intend to remain. But let's do the other hypo. Let's say Osama bin Laden's son was here to do some terrorism, and he brought his wife with him, and she had a kid while she was here, before they flee the jurisdiction after they blow something up. Does that kid have birthright citizenship? Are those really the same thing? And wouldn't you be overreading Wong Kim Ark to say that somebody who has permanent domicile is the same as somebody who's here temporarily on a tourist? I gave the terrorism example to be hyperbolic, but
Sure,
for a few days to be a tourist, or for birth tourism. They came here just to get citizenship for their kid. Is that really the same thing? So that's the starting point where they attack the case. They just differentiate it on the facts.
yeah, it's very interesting, and that's my gut feeling on this as well. Let's say that I was creating legislation to change this. Like, I feel that, let's say that you came here and you're not a citizen, right? But you came here in a legal process, a work visa. You've been here for 4 years on an H-1B, and you meet a woman, maybe also on an H-1B, because once you get into, it's a U.S. citizen that you have the child with, that's different. That clearly means that. So let's just say you're an H-1B and you meet a woman that's an H-1B and you have a child. Is that different, or should it be different than you're an illegal and you come over and you have a child? Now, let's say it wasn't birth tourism, but you just came here illegally. You're living under the radar, but you're not breaking any significant laws, we'll say for the sake of this, and you meet another illegal and you have a kid, right? Is that different than the first example? And then the third example would be birth tourism. I fully intend to cross the border to have this kid. Wasn't even conceived in the United States, but I intend to come across the border to have the kid. Those are three different levels of scenario. I think that reasonable people could draw the line somewhere and say, listen, I'm okay as a matter of law or a matter of morality, we'll say, with scenario 1, but not 2 or 3. Now, that's a different question, though, as you point out to, what does the text say? That's different saying, what should it be versus what does the text say? But I view it as interesting that you could differentiate those groups. So it's interesting that case does exactly that.
Well, that's why. So switching gears and trying to now make the argument against current birthright citizenship, you start there, because if Wong Kim Ark controls, you lose, right? Because Wong Kim Ark says we incorporate the common law of England. If that's true, you're dead in the water, right? So you have to differentiate that case, otherwise game over. Because what I can tell you the Supreme Court is not going to do. I mean, obviously, they could prove me wrong, but I would bet every dollar in my pocket they are not overturning Wong Kim Ark. They're not doing it.
Can I ask you real quick, when was that case from?
That's like 1890.
So it's within a couple decades of when the amendment was passed.
And if you listen to Justice Scalia and other originalists, when they want to overturn a case, they look to see how wrong it was, how badly it was decided, how much issues it's caused in the population. You look at something like Roe v. Wade. It gave no standard to judges. It was endlessly contentious. It was just disaster from moment one. None of us heard about this case until Birthright. For 170 years, this case was okay. So overturning this one, they're not going to do it. They might say it doesn't apply to this. That's not overturning it.
Right.
That's just reading it narrowly. Right. So that's issue 1. Then if you cross that barrier, if you convince 5 justices or 6 justices to read that case in a more limited way, then you can look at the dissent of that case, where Justice Harlan is a 7-2. 2 justices said, no. This should be read more narrowly. It should be about complete political allegiance. And they cited back to another case, the slaughterhouse cases, where the Supreme Court had said the same thing. It wasn't about the case. Slaughterhouse cases weren't about birthright citizenship, but it was about the 14th Amendment. And they mentioned in passing in the slaughterhouse cases that you had to owe complete allegiance to the United States, meaning if you owed allegiance to a foreign sovereign, that would not qualify under the language of the 14th Amendment. So now, if you buy that, if you buy Wong Kim Ark doesn't apply, now you can start getting to this interpretive game about what does subject to the jurisdiction mean? And you can point to cases like the slaughterhouse cases where they say, no, it doesn't mean what you're reading it to mean today. It actually does require that we think you have total allegiance to the United States, which would, I think there's a fair argument, square up with Wong Kim Ark, right? Because if you're a long-term domiciliary, if you've been living here 20 years, you probably do have allegiance to this country.
Yeah, it's I mean, all that, but man, what a can of worms does that open for interpreting what a sole allegiance to a country means? Like, for example, an awful lot of people that we see in another case that we're going to be on a panel, I think, Thursday, talking about some of the crimes associated with the Somalians in Minnesota. Yeah. Like, you have actual, like, politicians that are running on, like, yay, Somalia, blah, blah, blah. Arguably, you could say, like, look, that person, now, granted, this wouldn't be a question of citizenship for them. That's not what I'm suggesting. But a question to their sole allegiance, right? Like, it's like, well, if you're, all kinds of things. If you're advocating for another country that much, if you're sending remittances, like huge portion of your money back, like all of those might be things that you could interpret like, look, you don't have sole allegiance. If you're spending X time a year in another country, right? Like, it's like, well, you came here from Mexico, but 4 months out of the year, you're in Mexico. It's, wow, what a can of worms that could open. Yeah.
Now, and then this is getting real can of wormsy, but I did a little bit of research trying to figure out how I make this argument, because like you, I think from what you said, I started out like 80-20 on this. I was like, birthright citizenship's going to win. I'm down to like 60-40. I think birthright citizenship probably wins, but there's a few weird details historically that stood out to me. So speaking of like, what is the 14th, what was it meant? How was it understood in 1868? Well, in 1885, there was this guy named Bayard, who was the Secretary of State. And he was asked about citizenship questions a few times. One of them was about this guy named Ludwig, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Ludwig Housden, who was a birthright citizen. He had been born here, he had left, and he'd lived in Europe his whole life. And now he was asking, am I a US citizen? And he said, no. He said, no, you're not a US citizen. And he was echoing the same lines the Heritage Foundation is giving today. You're not a US citizen because you weren't, you have not spent time here. Your parents weren't permanent domiciliaries here. They weren't like Wong Kim Ark, who had, his parents had a long history here. You're in a different category. And he did the same thing with 2 or 3 other applications. And he said something similar when the government of Belgium asked, what's the US policy? So now, does that prove the case in and of itself? No. But if you say, well, in 1868, they ratified this amendment. In 1885, the Secretary of State was deciding what does the amendment mean. And there was no national policy. It was all ad hoc decisions made by him. And he read the 14th Amendment the same way that the Heritage Foundation does today. He thought that it, subject to the jurisdiction of, was a more onerous test and it had more teeth to it. So what does that mean? Well, it means that at least the Secretary of State understood it to mean something different than what we've interpreted it to mean over this period of time. So that opens the door historically, if that makes sense. Now we can say, well, let's look at the other historical examples. But we have interpreted this for 170 years one way. So there's going to be a lot of examples going the other direction.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because if I'm on the other side, then the point I'm making is like, okay, given that, at what point did the people in positions of power decide they weren't going to enforce it in that manner? Because clearly we haven't, since that day, right? I can't think of one other example. Not to say there aren't historical examples going back to like the early 20th century. I don't know, but clearly in my entire life, 41 years, and I think even going back in my father's entire life, I don't think that it's ever been interpreted that way. I think it's been, if you were born here, you were a citizen.
But you're right. But that, for an originalist, big shit. You're asking me, what was it understood to mean? And the originalist question is, what was it understood to mean at the time it was ratified? What did it mean back then? Not what does it mean now? So the practice in between doesn't mean that much compared to the examples at the time historically. Just to give you an example of how this reasoning works, it's a little bit less complicated. Justice Scalia was once asked, does the 8th Amendment's prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment, does that bar the death penalty? And he said, obviously not. How do I know? Well, when the 8th Amendment was ratified, the death penalty was the penalty for most crimes. So whatever they meant by the 8th Amendment, it could not have meant the death penalty was unconstitutional.
Yeah.
This is a similar argument. Whatever they meant by the 14th Amendment, it could not have meant that you were guaranteed birthright citizenship just because you were born on this soil, because Secretary of State Bayard was denying citizenship to people in that category at that time. So clearly that's not what it meant. That would be the argument. But it's tough though, because like I said, the historical pedigree going back to England is tough. If you buy into the idea that the common law was incorporated, I think you're up shit's creek.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. So as a non-lawyer, I've debated with lawyer many times, left-wing lawyers, and it's interesting. I do understand the utility of using the definitions of words and the meaning of words at the time that the foundational document was created, whether it be the Constitution, specific amendment, specific law, whatever the case may be, because a lot of these words can change in meaning. Right? That's true outside the scope of a legal sense, but it also is true inside the scope of a legal sense, which can be confusing. And so then the question becomes we might look at something now like unusual punishment. Well, what's unusual to us? Well, it's sort of subjective. Unusual is a bit subjective. For example, if I would assume, right, it would have been completely unusual to do sex changes back in the day, right? Nowadays, we wouldn't say that's unusual, right? Obviously, to enforce that on someone as a punishment would seem cruel, but as far as the term unusual, I one example I could give is like when I was debating frequently the term insurrection. And it's interesting because not to get too a foul here, but in the Colorado's decision that kept Trump off the ballot, they refused to define the term insurrection. Now they did provide a couple definitions of sort of contemporaneous interpretations of what insurrection would be. And the interesting part was it basically would mean that pretty much every Black Lives Matter rally you ever saw was an insurrection. Because it basically was just super, it just basically said, non-state actors that are engaged in, wanting to change politics using violence or intimidation. And it's like, well, I mean, that's any protest that got violent that's protesting any law ever. That's an insurrection and so it's interesting if you go by the term. So I do agree that we need to look at those terms, but isn't it true, if I'm playing devil's advocate, that a lot of terms or sort of the ideas behind them have changed and even the originalists are sort of okay with it? For example, the concept of free speech meant something vastly different back in the day than it means now, right?
So this is an interesting can of worms you've opened. So we're going to go down this, but I'm just letting you know you're opening Pandora's box right here. There's basically two. Well, I'm gonna overly simplify. There's kind of a split amongst originalists. So all originalists think the correct way to interpret the Constitution is to look at what the words meant originally. What was the original meaning? That's how you're supposed to do it. Now, if you're a Justice Thomas type originalist, and this is my buddy Lactoid is this type of originalist, that's what you're always supposed to do. So if you come in and he says, they say, oh, free speech. Well, it means what it meant back then. And any case that was decided that says something different, it's wrong. Rip it up, and willing to overturn all kinds of cases. Justice Scalia was a little bit more measured, where he would say, well, I think it should have meant what it originally meant. And the cases that came in between, if I was on the court, I might have done something different. I might have voted differently than they did. But stability is the name of the game in law. You can't just go ripping up cases willy-nilly because you don't like them, right? Like at a certain point, you have to respect a case because it's already been decided. It's called stare decisis. It's the doctrine that, can you imagine living in a world where every time you went to court, you said, Judge, Black Elk screwed me. He was supposed to give me videos. I paid him. He screwed me over. He didn't give me the videos. We signed a contract. And the judge says, contract law, we don't do that anymore. Right. They can't just make it up. It destroys the stability of the country. So Scalia would say, yeah, I would have done it differently, but I'm going to respect the cases that came afterwards. So the meaning of free speech might have evolved legally, but the original meaning of the term never did. So if you ask me, and that's an important distinction, right? So someone like Justice Thomas, he's going to go straight root and branch. Like I can predict when he writes his decision, he's going to say, this is what I think the 14th Amendment means. And that's the outcome of the case. There's nothing, I don't worry about anything else. I think Justice Barrett, the other originalists on the court, are going to look a little bit more and they're going to say, like, how do we reconcile whatever we're doing today with Wong Kim Ark? Because we want to respect that case. We don't want to just rip it up. I think that's going to be the deciding factor, which is going to be great for legal nerds, but perhaps incomprehensible for lay people. I don't know.
See, I was a big fan of Scalia, and when I was debating in college, with the 1 year, my final year, it was a Supreme Court topic, and I heard this little anecdote that maybe you'll appreciate. So you have to know that Scalia's nickname was Nemo, right? I don't know if you knew that, right? And so there was a story, I saw this quote of Scalia where he was telling the story. He's like, yeah, this young man came up to me one time. He was like, Justice Scalia, can I talk to you for a minute? He's like, yeah. He's like, talks to him for a couple minutes and goes, I want you to know that I named my fish after you. And he's like, oh, Nemo. He's like, no, Scalia. It's kind of a funny, that's pretty good. But
he was a really funny guy.
He well liked on the court too. So's Thomas, from what I understand, despite the fact that he would seem staunchly politically against a lot. My understanding is he's very well loved amongst members of the court that both Scalia and Thomas were.
Oh yeah, no. These are. I think that one thing I hope comes out of this case, however it turns out, is that people realize that whenever they talk about the court as if it was inherently political, they're mostly projecting, right? Like, are there members who are more political than others? Yes. I think Sotomayor, Jackson, and Alito are more political than other members of the court in their decision making. I think that you could probably make a good case for that. But that doesn't mean that they're hacks. That means that they're these people are highly educated judges who are making good decisions most of the time. They side with each other most of the time. It's only in these rare cases where it gets split down the middle. And I kind of hope this case ends up being like a weird 6-3 or like a weird 5-4, where you have justices scrambled up a little bit, just so people can see that play out in real time. But I do think there's real differences of opinion here. I don't think it's obvious what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think that I don't think Kavanaugh will go for it. I really don't. And I don't know who the fifth would be that I think for sure wouldn't. I think that Alito will vote for overturning. I think Thomas will as well. But that's about it. I think that you'll be hard pressed to find. Maybe Gorsuch might side with them, but that would be.
Yeah, I mean
that's my prediction on it. We'll see though.
Gorsuch, it's interesting because Gorsuch and Barrett, my take is like you could write a brief for them because those two are like pretty serious about their originalism. And I have no doubt that they would, like, whatever they think the originalist outcome is, that's what they're going to rule. Like, they're not going to play any political games with this. So, I think that they're gettable for either side, to be honest with you. The evidence is interesting. I thought it was a slam dunk case to keep birthright citizenship. It is interesting that there were these counterexamples that the government was not doing this. Now, of course, it kind of begs the question because, like, why was Bayard doing what he was doing? Because nobody gave a shit about this issue back then. Like, this was not a thing. And to your point earlier, like, God, you had to take like a 3-month boat ride to get here. Like, you're like, who's the person who's taking a 3-month boat ride and not sticking around? Like, right. Everyone was a Wong Kim Ark. Like, they were all long-term domiciliaries at that point.
Yeah, it's very, and especially then I know it gets into sort of, red meat for particularly my left-leaning friends. But then there's also the idea of people that don't have the United States' best interests at heart that are here, as you said with the Osama bin Laden example. And so then it becomes like, even in those examples, even their child's a citizen, like basically what would later be called an enemy combatant, a terrorist. Their child, they come here, they have a child. So, I think personally, what I would like to see in a lot of these issues is ambiguity taken off the table by another amendment being passed that clarified it. But there is zero chance of getting the amount of people necessary to agree on anything. I mean, you're hard pressed to have a simple majority to pass any legislation, let alone the amount of people that would be necessary for an amendment. But that would clearly be the best case scenario. It's not possible. It's not in my lifetime unless something radically changes. So
yeah, no, I there's no chance of that. I do think if when in law, you're supposed to argue the law and you're supposed to argue the facts and you're supposed to argue the policy dead last, because policy doesn't really matter as much as people think it does. But then, when you're being a pundit, you always argue policy first.
Correct.
So it's a little bit of a reversal. But if they get down the weeds into the policy aspect of it, from a policy perspective, I think you can make a good argument that it's hamstringing the federal government with a constitutional provision that allows no flexibility in this area is bad policy. And that it would be better to have the federal government attenuate, articulate this a little bit and say, yeah, okay, if you've been here 3 years, you've been here 5 years, let's figure it out. That said, can we convince the court that this isn't a mandate? I don't know. There is I will say the phrase "subject to the jurisdiction" is a bit ambiguous. Like, is it truly obvious on the face of the text that means subject to the jurisdiction means everybody except for children of diplomats, war families, and Native Americans before the Native American Citizenship Act of 1925? Is it clear that's the three categories? Or could that mean, people who owe their allegiance to other governments who have full jurisdiction over them? It's not, I don't think it's wild to say that if that language contains three exceptions, it could contain four.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's what I gather from this, and I hope people took from this as well, is sort of the narrative out there is this is a joke. The text is plain. That's it. There's only one interpretation of this. Why would you even have a case like this? It's so laughable. And you'd have to be a political hack as a justice to not interpret it the obvious way. Should be a 9-0 or it's a hack. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think that there's clear, more nuance and context when you're looking into like what terms like subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean. And so, a lot of the incredulous, how dare you even suggest that this is a potential case? How could you even? I mean, clearly this is what the framers intended. It's like,
yeah,
I don't think so. And by the way, real quick, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot. So if you don't have an answer to this, that's fine. What did the Constitution prior to that say? Was it just like, how did they determine citizenship?
I mean, the 14th, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments all came in together post-Civil War. So it didn't say anything, and citizenship was just determined by Congress. And in fact, I should have the text. Let me see if I save the text somewhere. There's a before the 14th Amendment was passed, the previous legislation about how who could have birthright citizenship did limit birthright citizenship with more express language. Let me look that up real quickly so I can get that for you.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I guess I hadn't thought of that question until right now talking to you, which obviously it doesn't have bearing necessarily, though it could have some input on what the framers of the amendment intended. But it was very interesting because there's certain things that happen based on the amendments we've had that we just assume that's always the way it was. For example, the Senate, right? That we get to directly vote on the Senate. And when you start to delve in, it's like, yeah, that was never what the original Constitution said.
Yeah.
We just take it for granted because, that's what an amendment's told us, and it's been that way our whole life,
So this was one of the arguments. It's a great question you asked. I should have brought this up earlier. I think Justice Harlan and the dissenters in Wong Kim Ark made the same argument. Prior to the ratification of the 14th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 governed this issue. And it said, all persons born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power, excluding Indians not taxed, are hereby declared to be citizens. Now, not subject to any foreign power sounds a lot like you're not a citizen of another country.
Yeah, that's what it does sound like.
The one argument that could be made is that it would be very, very weird for them to pass the Civil Rights Act in 1866, right? And then the same Congress in 1868 passes the 14th Amendment, and they mean something totally different.
Right.
That's pretty strange. Now, the counter argument is, well, they use different words. They did change the words, right? So I don't think it's a slam dunk. One of your chatters, RASA, has been talking about the intent of the drafter. I have not been going down that road because, and some people are arguing about what the drafters intended. The reason I'm not doing that is that I'm an originalist. Like, whatever he said is only evidence of what the public meaning was. His personal intent for an originalist doesn't matter. It's like, except as evidence of the public meaning. Now, again, if I was a living constitutionalist, it would be great because then I could say, oh, what do they intend? Easy, I win. But unfortunately, I can't do that.
Well, and more importantly, like the justices that you'll need to overturn this are originalists.
Yeah, and they think the same way.
So if they think the same way as you, then that's why to look through as a lens of an originalist why would make the most sense, because we're looking at it through the lens of, is it possible for them to overturn this?
Yeah. So, but I do think this is, if you're gonna argue about this, you're gonna debate this. This would be kind of the line you would need to take, right? Which is like, okay, are you saying that this text is so clear that we don't need to interpret it? It's totally clear on its face. Oh, wait, it has an exception for diplomats? Does it say that? No? Oh, it had an exception for Native Americans prior to 1925-ish? No? Oh, it had an exception for soldiers? Does it say that? No. So it has all kinds of exceptions. How do you know it has all these exceptions, right? And once now at least it's ambiguous. And then you can bring up the historical examples. And we have a good example from 1866. We have a good example from 1885, bookending it of that it didn't mean what you think it means or what people interpreted it to mean afterwards. And I think there's a good argument that Wong Kim Ark does not require this outcome. People have been overreading it for a long time. There's a good argument there. But Wong Kim Ark very clearly incorporates the common law of England, and I think that's just a dead end. So you definitely have to fight that fight.
Last question I have on this, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. That scenario with the diplomat, what happens if that happens today? Has that been interpreted that, the ambassador for, France is here with his wife, she has a kid here? How do we consider that?
Yeah, they don't get citizenship.
So the courts have currently interpreted the subject to the jurisdiction thereof to not include them. That's how it's been interpreted all this time.
I'm 99% sure. Yeah,
okay.
I don't have the case on the top tip of my tongue, but yeah,
I don't even know if it's ever happened. I would assume over the scale of since this amendment's been passed, it's probably happened once or twice. But I just wondered if it was like if they've just interpreted it as quite simply, nope, anyone born here citizen no matter what, or if they've had that carve out for that one specific rare exception.
Well, and there was a case called Elk, which was in like, I think it was, I keep saying 1925. I hope I'm right. In about 1925, there was a law that gave Native Americans full citizenship. But prior to that, this guy Elk, he renounced his tribal citizenship, and he kind of went out into the United States and tried to have a life. He had a kid, and the question was, or no, sorry, Elk might have been the kid. Sorry if I'm getting the details messed up, but in any case, doesn't truly matter. And the question was the child a U.S. citizen because it was born in the territory of the U.S., but the father was a Native American who had renounced his tribal citizenship? And the answer was no, because Indians were accepted from the 14th Amendment, again, because jurisdiction does have some limits attached to it. So, that's going to be the question. And it's a weird one because they were debating this back in the 1880s, but it just didn't matter. Like no one really cared about this. It wasn't a big issue. So we just don't have a really deep historical record about what the federal government thought about birthright citizenship, because it was, you were talking a few cases a year. It was like a really fringe issue.
Yeah. And so even if the courts aren't in the business of like sort of deciding things that aren't pertinent really to the time. So if it's 2 or 3 people coming into the country, it's like, probably, and someone's got to bring the case for it to be heard, right? I guess that's something that a lawyer told me one time when I was debating. It's like, you need a test case. You need the case that comes there. The Supreme Court can't just be like, that's interesting, we'd like to weigh in on that. They don't have the ability to do that. They can only weigh in on the cases available to them.
And to combine that with the point you made earlier about how hard it was to travel from Europe, like these examples about Bayard that I was giving, a lot of these were, these weren't people who came here and then hoped they got to be citizens and litigated for 15 years to get to the Supreme Court. Like the society was not litigious like this back then, and nobody would come here hoping they would get, that'd be crazy. It's a long trip. These were people who were in Europe, and they wrote letters, and they said, "Oh, Secretary of State, I'm living in Switzerland, but my parents were in the United States, and I was born there. I've been living in Switzerland since I was a child. I'm now 18. I'd like to come to the United States. Am I a citizen?" And he would write back, "No, yours truly, Secretary of State." Right? So we have the letter, but we don't have a Supreme Court case because no one would litigate that.
Right. It's so interesting. But yeah, it's something to look forward to, and I'm sure it's sort of, I know I say this not as an insult, but sort of like a nerd, not a lawyer yourself, but also someone that I know is a nerd when it comes to like sort of the big cases that are coming up. It has to be exciting for you, even politics aside, just to be like, well, it's going to be interesting to hear like a well-argued case and see which direction the court comes down on it.
Oh, it's going to be a doozy. And I've got to say, up till now, Trump has had a remarkable success rate at the Supreme Court. I think it's like 92%, 93. Yep. It's incredibly high success rate. But part of that has been the really tricky cases haven't been decided yet. And the really tricky ones right now are this one, the tariff case, and the slaughter case, which is, whether he can fire the heads of independent agencies. Those three are absolute doozies. And I think he'll probably win the slaughter case, but the other two, tariffs and this one, they could go either way. And I would not be surprised if he loses at least one of them. So we'll see how this breaks, but I think there's going to be some big news coming out of the court soon.
BJC, $5. Thanks so much. Says Andrew Branca has been covering the Birthright case. Has Ryan seen it or have an opinion on his coverage?
I have not been following Branca. I'm such a novice when it comes to these spaces. I only learned about him when I saw him and Good Logic go on Wick's show with Destiny and Soy, and then that I don't know if you saw that, but that debate became like
a shit show,
an unwatchable shit show instantly. So I did.
Branca struck me as the type of person that was like, I'm not in for that. Like if you want to have some sort of serious discussion, but I'm not here for the circus. And let's be honest, that's a circus at times with Destiny. So
I think he. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people are saying he ran away, but I think he was kind of like, man, I'm a lawyer with some dignity. I'm not going to be yelled at by some like fucking idiot I don't know.
Yeah. I totally. That was my reading. Now I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw the part where he left, and that was what I felt probably happened. All right, so that's the first case we're looking at. Now the next case, I don't know that it has the sort of legislative ramifications, what it would mean for the makeup of the country, but certainly in a hotly contested political environment, I think this case has a lot of potential to sort of raise some ire, and that is the January 6th pipe bomber case. So there's two ways to look at this. One, it's sort of, how is the case against them? Like, is it a compelling case? And more importantly, the legal question, and I should have asked you this beforehand, I told you I'd bring this up. Does the pardon that Trump issued for January 6 people, will that apply to this person, even if he pleads guilty or is found guilty? The second question that I wanted to ask you is more of, what are the chances that it took this long to be able to sort of charge this person, and the normal process of sort of legal investigations and things of this nature, if you have any opinion on how long that goes. So to start with, from what you've seen of the indictment, does this look like a compelling case to you?
I mean, it looks pretty good, right? Like they've got physical evidence about the pipe bombs and like what it was made of. I think they found the caps. They've got the footage. They've got, he was apparently wearing pretty distinctive shoes. And then, I mean, the thing that said to me, oh, this is for sure going to happen. In discovery, they're turning over a 4-hour interview that he gave to the police to his lawyer. Now, hot tip, I'm not your lawyer, but, just saying the hot tip, just so you know it. Don't sit down and talk to cops for 4 hours without your lawyer present. That's generally speaking a recipe for disaster. If somebody's there talking to the cops for 4 hours without their lawyer, and then they're given that, they have to turn it over to the lawyer later, that strikes me as somebody who was giving up really valuable information / confessing, right? Like, because, I think if you were vigorously defending yourself, you call for your lawyer.
Yeah.
So I think likely he admitted to some stuff in that conversation.
Now, just to be clear, and I think this is worth saying as an aside, that's not advice contingent on you not being intelligent. even very intelligent people should have an attorney, because when you're the person that's the subject of the interview, oftentimes you're thinking at it through an emotional lens, even if you're the smartest person in the world. And if you need an example of why it's important to call your attorney for any of these sorts of conversations, ask General Flynn, where the FBI came and talked to him. Presumably Flynn's a smart guy, right? And yet, right, you saw what happened when they intentionally talked to him when he thought they were just being friendly with him. Well, that ended up biting him in the ass and like sort of ruining his life. So yeah, I know how it is. I've talked to people. It's like, I wouldn't need an attorney. I'm smart. I'm not like those people I see that are, some young, dumb hoodlum, that doesn't know the right things to say. Not me. I'd say the right things. Yeah, you may be surprised. So it's always best to have an attorney present. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So the thing about, just to say this, because most people don't know this, weirdly, I don't like the guy, but Mandami in New York gave this advice to people recently about, he put out a video about how to resist ICE in New York, but the advice he gave was actually like, unlike the military advice that was given recently, was actually pretty carefully worded. And one of the things that he said that is totally true is that the police are allowed to lie to you. They are allowed to lie to you. And because they are allowed to lie to you, it makes it very dangerous for you to be speaking to them without your attorney present, because they'll stop lying to you when your lawyer's around, for some obvious reasons, but or at least most of the time. But if they can just say stuff to you, that puts you in a very bad situation.
Your buddy's in the next room. He just ratted you out. You better say something fast or your ass is going to jail. Oh shit, right? Like, yeah.
Dude, in law school, I read this crazy case where the cops dressed up as cleaning ladies in a hotel, and they knocked on the door and they said, "We're the cleaning ladies, let us in." And the guys in the hotel, like the drug dealers, they're like, "Yeah, let them in. They're cleaning ladies." They let them in. They're like, "Oh, we see those drugs in plain sight. We're arresting all of you." But it's like they're allowed to lie about being cleaning ladies, and then you let them in.
That's right? Crazy.
So you got to be. This is why you get a lawyer. But the fact that it does not appear that this guy had a lawyer, I think he's done. Now, the one thing that's struck me as interesting, there was no tip. This was just like 5 years of police work, apparently. Like, it's weird that the case broke so suddenly now, but maybe that's just because, I think Bondi was saying that there were like 230,000 of these blasting caps that they had to track down. And they eventually cross-referenced, him, and they looked at his purchase of the caps. And I guess maybe that just takes a really long time.
Well, sort of where my focus on this would be sort of, it seems as if there was a lack of urgency on investigating the pipe bomber. And if I'm going to put it as neutral as possible, I think you saw this from the January 6th committee, when there's, Thomas Massey got to interview Benny Thompson in Congress and was asking him questions, and Benny Thompson didn't know like the first thing about the pipe bomber, and admits that basically the January 6th report wasn't really focused on that much, which seems odd to me, because I think objectively this had the potential to be the most lethal and most serious thing that occurred on January 6th. And then, we saw discrepancies in sort of the FBI. Steve D'Antona, the FBI agent, when interviewed, said that even though we could all see footage of this alleged pipe bomber on a phone, that the phone data from the companies was corrupted, and that would have probably been that specific type of call that he was making. And then, of course, after this, the phone companies all came out and was like, no, our data wasn't corrupted. And so what was shocking to me the most about this was to hear Pam Bondi and Kash Patel come out and say there were no new tips. We were able, by putting a priority on this, we were able to sift through and be able to say, okay, it took us some time, but we found this. Now, the conspiracy theorists amongst us will say, well, this guy's not the real guy, they're covering it up, or any other number of things. And the reason that the timing's suspicious, because The Blaze just broke a story that named the real perpetrator, this woman, based on gait analysis, right? But if we're just accepting it at face value, it seems pretty bad for Chris Wray's FBI that in what seems to be the case that should have been one of the highest levels of urgency, it seems that urgency wasn't there. Conversely, every sort of blue-haired grandma that was walking in the Capitol not committing violence, it seemed like they did everything possible to turn their lives upside down to investigate every angle to see what was going on.
Yeah, and this guy doesn't seem like, I mean, if you're going to put on your tinfoil hat, right? You'd think they'd put up somebody for the crime that would have some kind of political expedience. But this guy just kind of seems, I mean, I'm sure some people are going to try to make a mountain out of a molehill, but he seems kind of run-of-the-mill crazy to me. Like the comments, he's like, yeah, 2020 was stolen, but also we should burn down the whole government, and I'm going to bomb the RNC and the DNC and the whole, he kind of seems like the whole system needs to go, not because I want my side to win.
Well, but now, Ryan, let me tell you. Now you're talking to someone whose tinfoil hat's on under my hat.
All right, let's hear it.
Here's the narrative. Have you ever noticed that a lot of these high-profile cases are very ambiguous? The people that carry them out, it's really hard to put your thumb. Right? Mm-hmm. On one hand, they said that they're carrying out this shooting because of climate change. There's too many people. But on the other hand, it says they hate brown people. And it's like, wait a minute, that's a cause we associate with the left and the right, right? And there's a lot of these sort of things. Well, the guy that, what was the guy's name that shot at Trump? Brooks, right? Mm-hmm. Well, he donated to Democrats, right? He was registered a Democrat, right? It's like, really? Well, he clearly hated Trump. And so there's a lot of I could make a case that if you were setting up a Patsy, that you would have them be ambiguous enough that it's sort of red meat for both sides, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, now we never try to get to the bottom of this. Both sides have something to be satisfied with. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm just letting you know that's what people would say. Of course, this guy said something like that. That's the exact type of Patsy you'd set up so that both sides have red meat to chew on and no one actually continues to look and get to the bottom of it.
So, all right, the obvious counterpoint being, it's also not inconsistent for crazy people to be inconsistent. You'd actually be surprised if they were consistent, right? Now, the weird thing about this guy, though, is that, at least from the details I saw online, it sounded like he was planning this for a while. Like, he started buying materials, back the year before.
2019.
In December, yeah. And he bought them at different stores. So it was harder to track him down because he was buying the parts and then assembling it so that you couldn't track down, like if you go into, Dick's Sporting Goods and Home Depot and over the course of a day, just purchase all the pieces for a pipe bomb, the FBI is knocking on your door pretty quickly. So he had a plan, which is there's a little tension between having that kind of plan and being like a total whack job. And he didn't look like a whack job in court. He kind of, people were saying that he was put together. He was listening carefully. So I don't, there is something a little bit weird there, but I don't know what that means anything.
Taking it at face value that this guy was the legitimate guy that did it. Like, obviously, he'll have his day in court, right? So fair enough, right? But it sounds to me like the most likely scenario is this guy had a plan to attack something, right? Or he's making it up as he goes. I don't think that when he's buying this shit in 2019, he's like, January 6, 2021. That's it. That's the day I'm targeting, right? Like, it seems like this was probably a guy, let's assume he was like sort of an anarchist, like they're saying, disaffected with the government. And so you're just like, you hear accounts of this a lot with these people that are, carry out mass casualty events, or people that are serial killers, where they're sort of talking themselves into it, right? Like, some days you're like, I would never do that. And then you're like, I'm going to do that someday. I'm going to do that someday. So you take a little step. You buy that part that you're going to need to make this. And so you do that, and then you wait a couple months, and it's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go through it. Then you go buy more parts. And then something eventually, as you keep escalating, it finally gets to the point where you carry out the event. Now, that's interesting, though, because you're right. They suggested that he started to buy this stuff in 2019, early 2020. The narrative that the Democrats pushed was like, well, this was in response to Trump sort of goading him to. I don't know. That's a tough case to make when he's setting all this stuff up and purchasing all this stuff well before the election's been decided. It seems like this guy intended to attack something, right? Even before he found out about the election.
Yeah, it's just, it's not clear to me that we have details that, like, when I read the coverage, I didn't have like an immediate, like, oh, he's this. This struck me as kind of more of like, oh, that guy's crazy sort of vibe. But he'll have his day in court. We'll find out. You raised a point earlier that's a really funny one I hadn't thought about, which is he covered by the blanket pardon?
Right.
And I pulled it up. I'm looking at it in Part B. of the pronouncement, it says, grant a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all other individuals convicted of offenses related to events that occurred out or near the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. Now, he might go into court and say, I was pardoned.
That's what he's going to say. Yeah,
that would be a very funny defense. I mean, I think the counter argument is like, look, if there was a mugging, let's say somebody got their pocket picked during the January 6th riot, is that what Trump was pardoning? He was pardoning pickpockets. What if there was somebody who was illegally selling fruit? They didn't have a permit. Like, was that pardoned? I think the argument's going to be there's a list of names, there's some context. It's limited to that context, but is this offense related to the events that occurred in the United States Capitol? He at least has an argument. He can say it's related.
I mean, if you're his attorney and he's already pled guilty, aren't you making this argument? I would be if I'm his attorney. Of course, I'd be like, yeah, why not, man? It's a possible, it's a defense,
Well, and I can't think of a, I never researched this, but like mass pardons are pretty rare. Normally it's just a list of names, right? So what I need to look at is like I know Biden did some mass pardons for marijuana offenses and stuff like that. Like, did he list the names, or did he say everyone in jail who meets the following criteria? And if it was the latter, how was that interpreted? Now, it's a little different because presumably Biden was happy for people to be taking advantage of that. But then again, like, let's say there was a guy who got convicted of like sex trafficking while carrying 2 pounds of weed. And he's like, hey, I want on the pardon train. Probably somebody tried to pull that off and got told no. So maybe there's some law out there about when you can try to free ride on a pardon. I mean, it's not even clear to me though that this is related. Like it seems to me like the pipe bombs, like, gun to my head, the pipe bombs just seem like a different thing. Like he was even, I don't think, have you seen coverage? Was he even at January 6th?
I don't think so. I don't think, I haven't seen any coverage that he was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, I feel that's something that would have broke, though. Obviously we could find that more stuff will come about.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the reason that this story is so important, when the January 6th committee started, and this is political, not legal, for me, I thought there were two unresolved questions, because we already had the largest FBI task force in history going after perpetrators of January 6th. So it's like, what's really the part of the commission when it comes to getting to underlying facts that the criminal investigation is not going to turn up? Of course, it was political theater, in my opinion. But the significant questions that I felt weren't answered were, one, the pipe bomber. There seemed to be very little. And I thought that, look, this, I don't give a shit if it was Eric Trump that did it. Prison, rest of your life. We can't accept that as a society. We can't accept that as a country, that people could threaten our representatives with explosives like that. That's beyond the pale. That's different. Even as bad as it would be for someone, shoving a gate into a cop on January 6th. I'm not supporting that either, but those are different levels of escalation and different levels that could literally change the course of the direction of the country, taking out mass amounts of our politicians. That must be taken seriously. And so it was always odd to me that was like sort of on the back burner for everyone. And like from the context of Democrats, they certainly made hay out of January 6th, some calling it the worst day since Pearl Harbor. Why did they never really promote the fact that Kamala Harris was feet away from this bomb? I mean, for me, that's the political story. My goodness. I'd be making that point every day that I'm bringing up January 6th. But it was odd. It was like the dog that wasn't barking.
Mm-hmm.
Then once the footage came out where an off-duty police officer, by the way, I was just reading, who was it? Let me get this real quick. One of the lawmakers, I think it was Loudermilk, select committee, a subcommittee on January 6th, just put this out 7 hours ago. Chairman Loudermilk sent a letter to Carlin Younger, the individual who discovered the first pipe bomb near the RNC on January 6, 2021, requesting a transcribed interview before the select committee. Now that's the RNC bomb. The DNC bomb's the one we've seen the footage of, where it's nonchalant. An off-duty police officer sees it, goes, talks to Secret Service law enforcement, takes them roughly like 4 minutes to respond as pedestrians walk in front of what they think's a suspicious package. Kids walking by, and you're like, why is the lack of urgency in every area? And then Chris Wray at the FBI, like, we'll get around to it. It just seemed weird to me. So that's one of the reasons I wanted the January 6th committee. The other was to explain the lack of security that was present. And we just watched a video of the timeline yesterday. It is appalling, regardless of what you think of that day, to know that when the first breach happens, like outside the bike racks, outside the Capitals, there's literally like 7 police officers for a crowd of what they knew was going to be hundreds of thousands of people. And it's like, all conspiracies aside, like, that shit can't happen again, right? Like, we understand that. It's like, no. If we know that there are this many people coming to Capitol for any political cause, no matter how benign it may seem, we better make sure that there's people there, security there that's a little more adequate than 7 officers standing behind a bike rack. So that's the sort of things I wanted to see the January 6th committee do. And of course, those were the 2 things that they actively pushed back on. We don't want to talk about either of those things because it didn't serve them politically as much as, the let's get Trump under any circumstance. But it doesn't mean that these stories aren't important. And quite frankly, could still implicate Trump if you're a left-winger, right? The pipe bomber could well have been a Trump supporter. The lack of, security there could well be Trump's fault or someone under Trump's fault. So I always found it to be odd.
I haven't verified this, but I saw ZeroFlux put in the chat that the pipe bombs were placed the day before.
January 5th, yes.
Yeah, and that, I think I'd read that, but I wasn't 100%, so I didn't want to say it. And that, in combination with the fact that it wasn't brought up during the J6 hearings almost at all, kind of led me to believe, maybe going back to, is it pardonable, that this was just this was kind of an unrelated thing. This guy was doing his own thing. No, and if there was a way to tie it in with January 6th writ large, for sure it would have come up all the time, right? Because like you said, like the pipe bombs are so egregious. Like a pipe bomb in the Capitol is that level of violence is so different in scale than anything we saw on January 6th. If a pipe bomb had gone off, that would have been like a 9/11 type or something.
It's horrific. It doesn't have the same amount of mass casualties, but who the casualties would have been
oh my God,
unbelievably damaging to the country.
It would have changed the course of history, right? So that's I think dollars to donuts, that's what's going to come out in this case, is that this was just a guy who didn't really have anything to do with anything and was doing his own thing. Now, if he comes out and, like, let's say he's defending himself and he starts saying some wild stuff in court, oh boy, does this become a political firecracker real quick. If this guy comes out and he says, I did it for Trump, now we're going to have a shit show. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, the last thing I'll say about this, and then we'll move on to another story. It's hard to get specific details other than what we see publicly. Speculating is one thing, but like I've had a lot of people like, well, his motivations, blah, blah, blah. This is true of any time we see something. We're humans. We jump to conclusions. We always do, right? That's okay. None of us are beyond that. But you should have like certain levels of certainty before you're able to really talk about things like with some sort of confidence. With this guy, I think it's so shrouded at this point what his possible motivations. I think it's clear to look that the anarchist angle seems to be the best potential story right now, but my goodness, if you force me to say 100% this is what you think it was, I can't say that, it's always the case. I mean, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, and I hate to even do this, because to even speak about, well, if I was going to do something heinous, this is what I would do. I used to joke all the time, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of The View. So if I ever do something heinous, I'm going to put in my manifesto, I'm doing this for The View. Going back to Barbara Walters, Joy Reid convinced me, or you know what I mean? And then people be like, oh, look at that, a Joy Reid fan. When anyone that really knows me will be like, bullshit, that's 100% bull. So you never know, just because someone puts something in a manifesto or something, to take them at their word, not always the best thing. But then it's like, well, then what are we left with? Yeah, I know. It's troubling to think that way, but yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I think those of us who speak publicly, we're always, especially if we're debating, we're always going to be taking hot positions on some issues from time to time. But for those of you in the audience, I do urge you to take this shit a little slow. Like we all have theories. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have some fun with it, but you don't know. You don't know until it comes out, and that's okay. Like it's all right to let the story develop. Though I was laughing, Rob. This is a total tangent, but did you ever see when Norm Macdonald, rest in peace, went on The View back in the day?
It's one of my all-time favorite clips. Yep.
It is one of the greatest things that ever happened in the history of television. Like, for those of you who haven't seen it, do yourself a treat. Google Norm Macdonald on The View, and just, he just goes on there and with a straight face accuses the Clintons of murder on The View and will not back down. And it's a matter of public record.
Yeah. Okay, manslaughter. That's my favorite line. No, you can't say murder. Okay, manslaughter. Like that's so funny. It's great.
He was truly one of the greats.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So we still have any specific cases, questions that anyone wants to ask. Feel free to put it in the chat, and super chat will be the easiest way to see. While we wait for that, any quick opinions on the Georgia alternate elector case being dropped?
Oh, I mean, it is, and I don't. But just a technical question: can you see mine or only yours?
Yeah. No, I see yours as well.
Okay,
yep.
Cool. It is. Look, man, you got to give credit where credit is due. That was some real bad lawyering. Like, you know what I mean? Like just like, like last time I was on here, we were talking about the Comey allegations, and you're like, boy, there was some stepping on rakes there. That was some bad lawyering. Like, This was some bad lawyering. Like, of all the cases against Trump, the Georgia case was probably on the merits one of the best. They had the phone call. They had the phone call recorded, so you have all the evidence. The question is that illegal or not? That's what you're litigating, but you already have the evidence, and it's a state law case, so he can't pardon himself, right? Like this is the slam. This is the best possible avenue to attack him legally, and they just couldn't get out of their own way. They just turned it into a fucking circus, and now the case is over. And you know what? That's what happens. If the government can't get their shit together, they lose. That's how it's supposed to go.
I'll bring this up here. I have it somewhere, but I totally agree. This was, of all the cases, like the two cases against Trump that I think were material that I think rose to a serious enough nature that I would be like, yeah, okay. That I could understand wanting litigated was the Ejon Carroll, just because the nature of the accusation was heinous. I think that the woman's full of shit and that they specifically changed the law to go after Trump, et cetera, et cetera. But the nature of the allegation is what I'm talking about. That's something that we would want to see litigated regardless of your political standing. So I don't know that I'm ready to, go to trial and have huge circus because unpaid parking tickets from the president of the United States. You see what I mean? But an allegation like that of sexual assault, okay, I get that, right? And then this was the other case. I thought that this case, mortgage, the mortgage documents or the house loan documents, that was a bullshit from the get-go. The fucking Alvin Bragg case, bullshit from the get-go, the one they got the convictions on. This was the one of that crop that was like, this is serious. And I say that at meaning like an outsider that's barely paying attention. What? President tried to steal an election? That's serious. That's not billionaire overvalued property on loan and then paid back loan. Whatever. Filed out the wrong memo on a check that he sent to a dude. Whatever. This is serious, right? The implication of it is serious. And yeah, for that to be the case, what an absolute debacle. Of just, it turns into, it's, my goodness, it looks like a Netflix show. Like, weird sex and these weird characters and the testimony on the stand. I'll see if I can find the clip here when I give you a chance to talk. But Nathan Wade, right, when they ask him that one question and he just pauses for 40 seconds, he's like, no, or something like that. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's like, oh my goodness. So just unreal.
This was actually the case that ruined the no politics Thanksgiving rule at my house, because somebody brought this up and they were like, my aunt, she's very much a blue dog, but she was like, "Whoa, it's so crazy that this case might go away just because this prosecutor and his boss had an affair." And I'm like, "No, that's not crazy. Like you're trying to prosecute the former president of America. You should be dotting your I's, crossing your T's, everything perfect down the line, and." Now it's coming out that the guy that you handpicked to do the litigation you used to sleep with, and he gave you thousands of dollars in cash over the years. Like what I mean? Like you're supposed, in terms of like the legalese, ethically, you're supposed to avoid even the appearance of impropriety, let alone impropriety itself, right? So like that's talk about a legal rake. All you have to do is not give this case to the guy you used to sleep with who's been giving you bags of cash. That would be a kind of an obvious thing to avoid, right? Like,
and it was funny to watch when all of this was breaking, is when I went on Tim Pool's show, and we were talking about this, and it was laughable because at the time people were like sort of trying to defend this, right? And I think that the argument would be like, yeah, this is Bush League, but Trump's still guilty. Right, that would have been a defensible way to go about this. But there were people like, well, this isn't a problem. It's not that big of a deal. And it's like, yeah, you got to go. That's a huge deal. That's a huge conflict of interest, right? I can't find the clip that I was looking for because the only clip I could find of it, someone humorously put him thinking about a little bubble of him thinking about her in a Fanny in a like bathing suit, which I'm not going to play that. It's silly. But the Byron York put out an article sort of going over some of the quotes of the overturning of this, and I can't find it for the life of me. And basically, it basically the judge or the prosecutor is basically like, listen, it's not illegal to challenge an election. Like it's not. You might not like it, but much like we saw with the contingent electors back in the day in Hawaii with the Nixon JFK election, like this is allowed. And I don't know. I think that it's compelling. That was always my argument. I wasn't a fan of the strategy, but as a contingent elector, and then as far as the phone call itself, I think it's clear to me that what he's suggesting is, I believe there's a bunch of fraud, and you only need to find a small portion of it, and that would switch the result in Georgia here. So I don't know. It seems compelling, and I know you disagreed in the sense that this was a very important issue for you. So I was wondering what your thoughts were since the cases sort of fell apart.
Well, I mean, it was important to me for a few reasons. One, I don't co-sign on the false slave elector theory. That was, as you said, a deal breaker for me. And, legally, in terms of presidential immunity, this is not a core power. The president's not ordering around his own DOJ here. He's talking to a state, and he doesn't have power over the state. So if he was saying, I think you gave an interpretation that'd be very friendly to the president. A less friendly interpretation would be, I need to find 16,000 votes. Go get me those votes, right? It's funny because recently Kamala Harris used the same language. She said we needed to find, I think it was like 50,000 votes, and we couldn't find them, and that's how she knew she lost the election. So apparently that lingo is more common than I thought it was at the time, for whatever that's worth. But look, I think that's worth investigating. That's worth investigating. Like if the president was in fact pressuring a state to commit voter fraud in his favor, that's a big deal. That would be a very big deal. Now, could they prove that? I don't know. They had the phone call.
I agree it would be a big deal. But I think that obviously, because intent would matter with this, and I think that obvious his argument, and as a jurist, even if it was Joe Biden that made this call, I would, if I'm trying to be objective, I would say, yeah, I can't prove that his intent was, I want you to make shit up. It could equally be that he's like, I believe that there was a bunch of fraud, and you only need to find a portion of it. That's all you need to do. And I think, given the circumstantial evidence that we see around there, I think that that's just the most likely scenario, and what I truly believe happened. The judge, some of the quotes from, not the judge, the prosecutor who decided not to pick up the case. he's a Scandalachius. There's a name, right? It says they were contingent electors. Quote, nothing in the evidence that the contingent electors conspired to overturn the election. On the contrary, the record overwhelmingly demonstrates the electors believed their actions were legally required to preserve Georgia's electoral votes in the event that Trump prevailed in the then pending lawsuit in Fulton County challenging the election. The electors convened the meeting pursuant to the advice of counsel. Also, they worked in public. Let's see. What does he say? I'm sorry. That's a quote from someone else. So, yeah, I mean, interesting. There were some questions I had about it, like, well, okay, you can't get Trump because he basically says, like, look, I mean, at this point, the dude's fucking president, right? By the time, so there's nothing we could do anyway. So then the question I had was like, okay, but what about alleged co-conspirators? Or can you pull them out and can you go after them? And he basically mentions in there too, like, there'd be problems with that. You know, so
well, I don't think there's political will is what it comes down to.
That's
at
the big
point.
part.
I think that, like, at the time, this was a big case. People were gonna get their star made. They were going after the big fish. This was a big deal, right? And everybody who did it ended up with egg on their face and their career kind of in tatters. And I don't think people want to do it again. I think that, like,
well, I mean, the election was the referendum on this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's clear that the American people were like, not as big of a deal as us as what it's making out to be. And so at this point, to relitigate it after all of these facts were public, right? Everybody knew them for years. And most of the people are like, eh. And so it's like, are you really going to, it would be a bad move politically for Democrats to push for it, because at this point, you'll sort of get an eye roll. Even people that dislike Trump, right? I think a lot of them would be like, really? We're back on this? There's not fresh outrages every week that we could talk about with Trump,
And I'm a fan of finding off-ramps for the season of political prosecutions. So, like, this is an off-ramp. It's not a big one, but, like, I'm gonna celebrate it. Could they have found somebody to go scorched earth and try this again? Probably, right? If that's what they were willing to do. But I think probably they made the right call. Like, this was now a while ago. There was an election, as you said, between now and then. There's, all kinds of new legal issues that we're talking about. I don't think people have an appetite for this anymore, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's good. You got to put this stuff to bed eventually, right? Like, we can't have another wave of 2020 litigation in 2032. Like, you've got to let this go and let the country talk about something else at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't think the lawfare will stop. I think that they'll just find another case, but I think this one's ran its course. And, it's seminal to so many people's hatred of Trump. People I talk to this day, that's all they'll talk about. January 6th, alternate electors. January 6th, alternate electors. Now, whether or not it's illegal is a separate question from whether or not you find it personally objectionable and the level of which you find it. I was never a fan of this because my feelings on the issue were, listen, let's assume that the election was stolen. Let's start under that, right? Mm-hmm. To say that it was. Like, how long do we have to litigate it? Like, what reasonably could be expected, And so you have from November until, like, the electors are due in, right? And they're certified on January 6th. Are we just supposed to perpetually, 2 to 3 years go without a president? Or what's the thought here? That the Trump doesn't leave office and he continues to be acting president, right? Like, yeah. I don't understand what we would do. And it's shitty to say this, but it's like, hey man, you got to put your best foot forward. You got to get the goods right now as best you can. Make the legal case as best you can right now. And whatever you could say, it's corrupt judges, it's this, that, and the other. Whatever your explanation wants to be, they didn't have the goods. They were incapable of winning these court cases, and again, I'm chagrined to say, because I do think in many ways the election was stolen, which is something we could talk about at a later date, but so did fucking 50% of Democrats about the Bush v. Gore election, right? They thought that was stolen. Mm-hmm. So what do we do? Do we just like, no, we're going to drag it out. Alternate electors and, screw it. We're going to refuse to certify electors. Clinton will refuse, and we'll just go on and on and on in perpetuity. Republicans would have been outraged. They would have said, this is bullshit. So I saw the point from the left there. It was like, I'm putting myself in the alternate perspective. Coming in to this term, if Kamala Harris was like, I refuse to sign the electors, I would have been outraged. I would have been outraged and said, you can't do this shit. What are you doing? So I understand completely the people that were outraged by this potential legal strategy of Trump. I also don't think it rises to the level of illegality. And given the stakes of shit that we'd seen in Trump's first term, like the FBI legally spying on Trump's team, etc., I think that it's just another regrettable moment in a series of shit that was started well before Trump, of our system that's sort of engaged in self-preservation, that's willing to break the rules to do it.
Yeah, well, but my thing is, and maybe this is just because of like my day-to-day life, as a litigator, but like sometimes I'm not going to name any names, but sometimes I get asked, like they're like, "Hey, we're really pissed off about this thing. We want to sue this motherfucker. Can we do it?" And it's like, no, not really. No, the answer is probably no. Probably what you want to do isn't going to work. And then they're like, "Well, get creative," right? And that is kind of how the legal system works sometimes. Sometimes people tell their lawyers to get creative. They take an aggressive position. They're like, is this legal? I think probably the judge is going to say no, but we can take a shot at it, right? I get that. But with some stuff, there has to be a higher moral imperative than what's legal and what's not legal, right? And that's why this pissed me off. And I think you said it well just a second ago, where it's like, if the current vice president gets to pick who the next president is, the whole system's done.
Yeah.
If you're taking the position that that's the rule, you kind of you've to me just gone too far. Just on like a practical level, there's no way to live with that outcome. Like it's unlivable.
Well, the alternative though is, let's say we find out next year, oh shit, they stole the election. Now are you kicking yourself like, well, maybe we should have taken a little more time. Maybe having contingent electors to hold things up for a couple months, to maybe have serious investigations into this would have been the correct thing to do, because now it turns out it's too late now. We have 4 years of a Biden presidency and all the disasters that came with it, and there's no fixing that.
Yeah, but we already have, like, one of the nice things about our system is that we've got like this long window, right? Like you get elected and then you're not president until next January. Like, like we got some time to work these angles and figure shit out if you need to. But
even still, get those records out of Georgia. Good luck. But they're still sealed in Fulton County.
I think to your point, what you need to have in a process is finality, right? Are you ever going to have an election that had no fraud in it? Probably not. There's probably going to be some marginal fraud. I don't think that I haven't seen any evidence of like dispositive fraud, but I think you're going to find some marginal fraud. What you're going to see a lot of is election interference. What country said what? Which person withheld what information? How did the media? Like that's all going to happen. But then you got to have a process, and when the process is over, everyone's got to dust themselves off and get ready to fight the next fight. Right?
Yeah, and even politically, I think it made sense. Like, it was clear, like, it was amazing. And again, I'm not a lawyer, right? But it was amazing how many people with such confidence was calling in my show after the election in 2020. And remember, there was this Texas case that went to the Supreme Court, right? And they were utterly convinced that the Supreme Court was about to overturn the election. And I was like, there is zero chance.
Yeah, no.
There is no chance. And there were, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people convinced this is it. And I was just like, even if it was true, even if the facts warranted that, the chutzpah it would take of the Supreme Court to be like, we're going to reverse the results of this election, and the fallout that would lead for this country would be insane.
No,
and so it's like,
you can't.
They're not going to do that. They're just not. Now, was the standing argument the best argument? Like, wow, you don't have standing, we can't look at it. Probably not, in my opinion. But nonetheless, right, like I knew that there was zero hope of this playing out just because of the ramifications of it. Like I totally got it. Evers jumping back in. What's up, Evers?
What's up, buddy?
Put me down. I said I'll be on at 7, right?
Oh, yeah. We'll get you up 13 minutes. But yes, so that's, as far as I was concerned, I thought it was a bad move. The other thing is, so I talked to a lot of politicians here in Pennsylvania that was running for office after the 2020 election, right? So 2024 elections, and they want to talk about election integrity. and they want to talk about problems with the 2020 election. And that's a big deal in Pennsylvania. And the reason being, even if you don't think it was stolen, we had a change. I always forget the name of it. It's like Act 77 or something like that. Like there was a law that in the state level changed the way we vote in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually the Superior Court of Pennsylvania overruled it and said that you couldn't do mail-in voting because the Pennsylvania Constitution didn't allow it. And then the PA Supreme Court in a 5-2 overturned that. So there was a lot of Republicans running like, well, this is an issue, right? Like we want to end mail-in voting. And what I recommended to them was the way they word this is don't look back, look forward, right? So you say things like this, listen, in today's time and place, it's not a matter of if, but when someone tries to exploit holes in our election system. Maybe it's an actor from a country like Russia or China, or maybe it's someone being nefarious in this country that's paying. Regardless, we need to have secure elections that there's enough faith in. We see how people already have a lack of faith, and the best way to have secure elections is to get rid of mail-in voting here in Pennsylvania and to have in-person in-day voting with ID. But the more you're like the 2020 election was stolen, it's like that's a political loser at this point.
Yeah,
people are over it. They don't want to hear it.
It's dead. And truthfully, it does distract from issues where I think Republicans have like a common sense point to make. Like California has a law on the books that says it's illegal to show your ID when you're voting. Like if you're doing it voluntarily, you're not allowed to do it. Like, why? What is the possible explanation for such a law, right? And if you look, not that like we look to other countries for our laws, but if you did look at election laws in other countries, voter ID is super common. That's not an uncommon requirement. And you have to have an ID. I remember during COVID, I needed to show my health information to buy a cup of coffee in Manhattan. To go in to buy a cup of coffee, I had to show them a vaccine card, right? So the idea that people can carry ID, this is not very burdensome. This is a thing that everyone is kind of required to do in this day and age. And it's not, there's a common sense argument. Like, why wouldn't we have this? What's the downside? And I think these are all fights Republicans can
because
win.
Black folks can't figure out how to get an ID. Except when you talk to Black people, they're like, "Well, that's insulting." What the
That's
fuck
very
are you
racist of
talking
you.
about?
Yeah.
But it is surreal. I do think that though there's a difference between running on, looking back at past elections, and then once you win, look. I think that it would behoove Trump if he legitimately feels that there was fraud. And they think that exposing that fraud could help going forward set a path to ensure that we have election security. I say go for it. We'll see. I won't hold my breath for them to be able to prove anything. But
oh my God,
that's
no.
different. That's different, right? Them looking back now and saying, look, were there things that were done inappropriately, etc., than running on it. And Trump made this mistake when he was running for office in 2024. If you want to talk about election integrity, then I guess I'm trying to say this. The sort of things that you're saying publicly that you're running on to get into office sometimes don't align specifically with what would be a good idea to say once you're in office. So if you really wanted to look back at the 2020 election, don't talk about it when you're running, right? Just be like, we're interested in election integrity, right? So you're not lying, right? And part of that is looking back at possible faults, maybe not just 2020, but elections we had previously. And say, look, we saw exploits here. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that, right? But the idea of the American people find the message stale, right? Yeah, the red meat Trump base is like, yes, but the average person that's like, hey, man, I can't afford groceries. What the fuck is this? We're still, guess what, man? Game's over now. You're not going to get retroactively put in president in 2020. So what's the point, right? Move forward.
And it's really Trump specific is the other thing. Like, what's her name? Sidney Powell, like the Kraken lady. Like, I mean, look, like she basically I think she got disbarred. Like they got bad stuff happen to these people because they made all these kinds of crazy statements in courts. They didn't have evidence. So, that already played out. It's all very Trump specific. And what I'd like to see the right start doing, not now, not the midterms are coming, but after the midterms, is we need to start taking Trump's temperature about who he thinks he's going to support in the next cycle. And then we need to start doing this fight. Like I was talking to Admiral Gibbs last night, and because I was saying to me, I was like, well, it's got to be DeSantis or Vance, clearly. And he's like, no, it's Abbott. it's Abbott for sure. And I hadn't even thought about Abbott as throwing his hat in the ring. But like this needs to get figured out, because I think the right has a deeper bench of national level talent than the left does right now. But it could all be wasted if it turns into squabbling and infighting, and then like the momentum all gets sour.
Well, I have bad news for you. Right? Here's the thing, right? Trump ain't gonna know who he supports until like literally it's campaign season, because you know how he is. He might be like Vance, 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 and then all of a sudden Vance does one difference, right?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, like, a lot of people have been good little soldiers for Trump, and I don't even mean that as an insult. To some degree, if you're working in a political appointed position for Trump, there's certain things that you would like to operate outside the scope of being like a good little soldier, right? Like, you don't particularly want the attorney general or the head of FBI being like, I'll do whatever you want, President. Like, or in the words of Eric Holder, I'll be your wingman. That's different. But vice president's different. Right? Secretary of State's different. These are cabinet level positions that you understand that even if you're Rubio and you get appointed to that position, it's like, look, I have disagreements with Trump on some of this shit. You're carrying out that president's vision and you're there to promote that administration. And so sometimes that might mean covering up warts that you yourself would have not fallen into, right? Maybe you're not the biggest fan of tariffs, but when you're Rubio and you're in front of the mic and it's like, well, how's this affecting sort of negotiations on other issues? You're towing the party line, right? Hey, my team, right? But once you get into campaign season, it's different, right? For example, you saw this happen in real time with Kamala Harris, right? Okay, how you gonna distance yourself from Joe Biden? Because it turns out a lot of this shit wasn't popular. And it was probably the death knell of her campaign when she was asked this question on The View and basically was like, there is no difference.
Well, did you see the story in the New York Post today? I was just thinking about this. A story came out in the Post. I haven't verified it or anything, but that basically just based off skimming it, there was a memo that the Biden administration gave to Biden that said the open borders policies that you're advocating for are going to cause chaos and political disaster. So they were telling him that. So this memo existed. Now imagine you're Kamala Harris, right? And they ask you, how would you distance yourself from Biden? You've read the memo. All you have to do is say, God, I probably would have listened to the memo.
Well,
But she's an
idiot.
Joe told her no space between us.
Right.
Right.
That was part of the agreement. Now, this is me really sort of reading into things, but I've read accounts that I trust is true, that Biden didn't want to leave. I think we all agree with that.
Oh, yeah,
Biden didn't want to withdraw, right? And so when it was basically made clear to him, like, look, man, we're going to embarrass you if you don't withdraw, right? If that's the case, we're going to embarrass you. And so he finally was convinced to go. His final fuck you was not giving them an opportunity to pick, because he was like, I endorse Kamala. And then it's like, well, fuck. What's going to happen is Pelosi and Schumer are going to come out and go, no, 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 right? So once the sitting president does that, that's pretty much game over. Okay, it's going to be Kamala. Given that, if that's true, and Kamala's probably very thankful and reticent to distance herself too much from Joe. Plus, she's just not. Let me try to not be a dickhead about this, because on my own show I would have more harsh words for Kamala. But I don't know that she is the most politically shrewd. Let's put it that way, so that she would be able to come up with sort of a nuanced answer that would pay respect to her time as VP, but also distance herself. I do not believe that's the case with Vance.
Well, I don't think Biden liked her. Like, no. I think he felt like he had to pick her, and he gave her the border czar job, which was thankless and impossible. Like, think about this for a second. He got a memo that said not enforcing the border is going to cause chaos and heartbreak for you. And then he appointed her to be in charge of the border where he wasn't doing anything. Like, he was actively setting her up for a political fall, is I think the plausible reading here. So, I think that, like, from her perspective, she says she must know this guy is not really in her corner. He's backing her because he has to. He feels like that's the move. And if she came out there and said, I disagreed with the president on immigration policy, he would have hot mic'd her and told her to fuck herself.
Maybe.
Right? So it was.
But the reason I bring it up is I think that I don't think you're wrong. I think that to some degree, I think that Vance, though, isn't going to play that game. I think that Vance will be able to in a way, say, look, here's some slight things I would do different as president that has occurred this administration, while at the same time being like, but Trump's great. But here's the problem. I don't think that'll matter to Trump. I think Trump will be like, fuck you. You better be out there saying I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. And if you don't, well, then I'm going to give my blessing to Ron DeSantis, right? Or I'm going to give my I think it's going to be big ass kissing fest. That's what I think. And you know, so it doesn't. And here's one thing we know about Trump: it's easy to fall out of his graces very quick, as Marjorie Taylor Greene. And simultaneously, it's easy to get into his graces, right? Like you could be in the shit out, you know, you're in the doghouse, you're Ted Cruz, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later, it's like, my boy Ted, great dude, always loved him, you know. So it will be tumultuous. You would think someone in position, Trump's in a unique position. It is his party. It is undoubtedly his party. That's it. Whichever way Trump points, that's the way the party's going to go after him. And it's a weird, unique position because I think that's more true of Trump at this point than any time in my lifetime where a president totally changed the direction of a party and has the ability to appoint his successor basically on his word alone. And yet, simultaneously, the guy that has that opportunity is one of the most fickle people imaginable. So he's going to be like, nah, here, nah, here, nah, here. I don't think that he's sitting down every night, like at candlelight, writing into his diary, like, here's why I think this person would carry on my legacy. It's going to be feels for him. Who's done the right thing in the moment, you know? That's how I feel, so.
No, I think you're right. But it'll be interesting to watch, though, because I know you and I are both DeSantis fans. I don't know if he has the charisma to do a national campaign, truthfully. But holy shit, like I've seen him posting about political, like constitutional originalism recently. This dude is so smart and so savvy, and so he just understands how to run a government. Like, yeah,
I think he's good.
He would be unbelievable.
I think he's good. I really do. But I think that Vance is very good as well. Mm-hmm. And the difference between Vance and DeSantis, there's two things going for Vance. One is that he is the current VP, which makes him the front runner. And the other thing is Vance is incredibly charismatic. Like Vance is very good in front of the camera, right? And I think in ways that DeSantis, now that's a different question than who would be a better leader. That's different, right? But it's like if I say this, like if I say, well, one of the factors that suggests Gavin Newsom could be the Democrat guy is that he's good looking. Now everyone rolls their eyes and like, that's bullshit. Yeah, that matters. I'm sorry, it does. Ask JFK. You know, one of the stories they tell us in speech, you know, when I took college courses in speech, that there was a famous debate between Nixon and JFK, and Nixon had a cold. And everyone who listened to the debate, overwhelmingly the people thought, well, I say overwhelmingly, it was like 55% thought Nixon won. But those that watched it on TV, it was the opposite. Mm-hmm. JFK's a good-looking guy. You know, he's like, oh, Nixon kind of looks like this schlubby, like, got a cold, like, wiping his nose with a hanky. Perception matters. And so that's the same way. I understand. Now, I happen to like Vance as well. I'm not saying that I think DeSantis would be better at governing. But what I'm saying is there's two different skill sets. There's governing and being someone that's in a position of leadership, and then there's winning, and there's campaigning, and those are different, right? You might be the best campaigner in the world and be dog shit once you're elected in office, or maybe you're a terrible campaigner, but you would be the best senator, the best governor, the best president ever, and you're just never going to get your shot because you don't have the charisma or the connections or, you know, the wherewithal to win the campaign. So,
yeah, I mean, I have a hard time imagining DeSantis going on the podcast circuit and sitting down with Theo Vaughn and being entertaining the way Vance was.
Yeah.
You know, like that's hard for me to envision. And yeah, you know, it is what it is. Being popular helps in a popularity contest.
So let's see. What's Ryan's favorite dinosaur? Blasterbot wanted to know. He sent you.
I got to go pterodactyl.
Wow. Because it's got a silent P? Is that part of the reason?
And because my daughters are weirdly obsessed with them right now. Whenever I'm like walking up the stairs, there's like a 50-50 chance that somebody does a screech and throws a tiny dinosaur. So this is the vibe in the house these days.
Yeah, Blatchbot's always very generous with his dinosaur-themed questions. So, Ryan, what do you got going on? We'll end on this. What do you got going on this week? It'll be 2 weeks before we're back. So, anything
Yeah.
exciting going on?
Well, you and I are doing this debate on Thursday. I think Admiral Gibbs invited too many heavyweight conservatives, because this is I was looking at this murderer's row about the Somali fraud, and holy shit, do we have a stacked deck. So I think we'll just tee off on some poor fools on Thursday night. And then I'm hoping to do a celebration stream, because Zero Fucks, Chapingo, Grassroots, Blaster, Gelatinous Rube, thank you guys so much for donating. And honestly, I'm delighted that the channel's taken off and that there's support for it. So got to do a thank you stream coming up pretty soon. So I'll either do that before, probably after the debate on Thursday, or if not on Thursday, then do it Friday or on the weekend.
Well, that's awesome, and congratulations again for finally getting monetized. It's actually a huge accomplishment, and I know that you're going to go upward from here, so I can't wait to see that. I got an impromptu debate lined up tomorrow with Brian Shapiro. That's going to be at 3:30 Eastern time. It's only going to be about 45 minutes. It's on the radio, so no swears. Here's hoping. Don't swear. So I got that, and then I'm doing the extravaganza tomorrow as well at 5:00, and then regular scheduled shows. And Friday, I think I'm going to do a 24-hour stream to help pay for my computer, because this current piece of crap I have keeps cutting out on me. What it does is, not to get into too many gory details, we're just using my StreamYard right now. Let's say I was using my StreamYard and then had to go onto your StreamYard, or had to go onto Zoom from there. It keeps crashing out on me. And unfortunately, a lot of bigger opportunities you get with debating people, that tends to be what happens. And so getting a new computer to hopefully make sure that doesn't occur.
I mean, look, man, good news is a business expense. Bad news is, streaming does have a little bit of overhead. It's not, there's businesses that are worse, but you definitely got to put some money into it. Someone the other day on X, they accused me. They were like, "Oh man, you just do this for the money. You're doing it for," I'm like, motherfucker, like, this is a hobby. This is apparently the first money I've ever received doing this, which is great. I'm so thankful and delighted. But man, you got to get a streaming rig. You got to pay StreamYard. Like, you invest in this.
Yeah, this is the first year I will have made money on it. If I consider buying computer, and when I've traveled for things doing with politics, which isn't all my show. So I travel and do things with Pennsylvania politics, but I chalk that up to my hobby of politics and streaming about politics. This is the first year that I've actually made money on it, because I've done it full time. So yes, if you're out there and you're getting started, listen, it's sort of like, I want to play in the NBA, right? It's like, only a small portion actually make it to where it's like a way of life for them profitability wise. Most people that you see streaming are treading water. Even if you see like, hey, they made $400, $500 that stream. Yeah, probably by the time you pay your StreamYard's account, by the time you factor in buying your equipment, this, that, and the other, that stuff, you ain't making Elon Musk money, probably. If you're doing it, so.
Google takes their cut, right? So yes, I mean, look, this is what it is. Yep. But Rob, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure, buddy. And I look forward to crushing some face. Our chats are so friendly. It'll be nice to go in there and get riled up on Thursday.
Yes, it'll be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be great. So, all right, we'll see you Thursday.
Sneak preview. Is there anything funnier that's ever happened in American politics than Governor Walz standing in front of a microphone and saying, "It's just shameful that people keep driving by my house and calling me a retard"?
It's like, in this meme culture, it's like you couldn't have asked for it. It's like, oh my goodness, so good. Yeah, I mean, that's it. That dude was this far away from being the VP, just so we know. Hey.
Can you imagine what happened the next day? He goes on camera and he says, "People keep calling me retard." The next day, they probably had to install like a traffic light. There were so many cars driving by his house.
A quick pro tip: if someone's doing something like that you don't like, don't announce it in front of the world, because you've just given the trolls every ammunition they have. Like, oh shit, that's working. Let's keep going. So. All right, Ryan, it's going to be a blast Thursday, so I can't wait. And I hope you have a great set of streams until then, man.
Hey, good seeing you, buddy.
All right, we'll see you. So give me a second, Avarice. Let me do this. Remove Ryan from my... Okay, and then remove this. Okay. All right, Avarice, you ready to come on? Now, for those that don't know, my good friend Avarice, officially a father. How's it going, man?
Hey, I don't have a lot of time, and I apologize.
Oh shit. Sorry, it bumped you off for some reason. Sorry, go
let,
get.
let Ryan know. Right, let Ryan know. I apologize. I didn't know that joining off my phone would jump me right up on stage. So
No problem.
I apologize. But I know what the world really wants. They don't want to see me today. They want to see the baby. So I'm gonna bring baby Avarice on for the world to see today. Since
it's a big moment.
That's what everybody really wants. So
here we go. Uh-oh.
That's front facing. Hold on, we got to figure out which one it is.
He just looks like the Orange Lantern.
Yeah, hold on.
Oh my goodness. Oh no! It disconnected. You just DC'd on me. Are you still there?
And there we go.
No, wait.
Avarice.
Now wait. Can you hear me? The screen went black and we couldn't see anything. For real.
Hold on.
Okay, there we go. Holy cow.
How about this?
Oh my goodness! Look at that man! Look at that hair. He's already beating me with the hair. Look at that.
It's actually this way.
What a cutie. There he is, baby Avarice. He does. His face looks like you, man. That's amazing. I'm so excited. Everyone, your reception, now it's muting you. But
can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. How's the wife feeling?
There we go. So there it is. Baby Avarice, thank you all for your support. Love. I can barely hear you since the camera switched. So I just wanted to say, everybody, thank you for your support. Get those donos in. The computer is not cheap. I know this because I'm the one that purchased the parts. So
it's true.
Get those donos in. Thank you, everybody. Everybody for the support. Rob, EOD, the Norians, Prem is out there, Jest, and all of the Crucible crew and the family that you've all created with my child and me here at Normal America. I can't express how much love you guys have given to me and my family, and how much support you guys have done. Through my entire year, I haven't had to worry about a single meal or stress or what I had to go fetch because of the whole crew here and everybody wanting to help. So you're all of you guys, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for helping me and Riddick, my baby Avarice, or aka Riddick, is to enter this world, knowing that this world, we're gonna make it a better place. So I appreciate it, and I love you all.
We love you, man. It's amazing. God bless you. I hope your wife's feeling great, and I can't wait for you to finally get home with your family. Really, it's just a surreal feeling. So I'm so happy for you, man.
Yeah. So I'm really excited. He came out, for everybody. He came out 7 pounds, 15 ounces, and 22 inches long.
Perfect.
All you guys are getting is baby Avarice. You guys aren't getting my wife beat up in hospital beds.
Yes, of course. But hopefully, is she feeling all right?
She was a trooper. She's feeling awesome. She's tired. She's sleeping now. So yeah. But I'm over the moon. I'm excited. I'm happy. And again, as the great Andrew Wilson would say, I hope this baby doesn't come out looking as ugly as me.
Well, he is incredibly handsome, and man, I got to say, we're so excited. All of us are so excited. I know Courtney and me both are, and I know everyone watching is. So, truly a great day.
Well, there was one item we did bring with us to the.
Oh, look at that!
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did bring it with us to the hospital.
Well, I'm humbled, man. I'm glad. Hopefully, he loves it.
So,
that's great,
that was
man.
from Courtney for everybody to get out there. That is a Courtney embroidered gift. So
she does well. My wife's very good. So, all right, man. We'll get some rest. Spend some time with your family, and just know that we're all thinking of you, man. We're so proud for you guys, and I can't wait for you to start your adventure with your family, man.
I do. I just can't. I mean, you know me, I'm a workaholic, so I can't wait to come back to work right here on the Normal of America with robnoerr. So,
well, I appreciate it, but please, 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 just know that we will be thinking of you, and don't rush to get back or anything like that. It's precious.
I'm not rushing to get back. I think we'll make like little small appearances through here and there, and as I run the back, but until I'll probably give myself a week here before you guys actually see me back on for whip songs. So
there you go.
Just because I'm not here dancing to your whip songs, people, don't mean that you get to escape it. So make sure to get the donos in.
You know, that's how people feel, you know. So, but nah, it's great. Thank you so much, man, again. And God bless you and your family, man. You guys stay safe, and I can't wait to hear from you soon.
All right. I love you all. I love you all out there in Normal America with robnoerr. You guys are the greatest family ever.
Thanks, man. We appreciate it. Love you guys. Whoo! Man, is that absolutely amazing. Whew. Yeah, what a man. Both Avarice and his son Riddick really does put into perspective, you know, sometimes we cover a lot of stories and stuff that are a little depressing, and to see something like that, it's truly amazing. Absolutely amazing. I have to go to the restroom. It's been a couple hours, but in keeping the memory of our beloved friend Avarice and his beautiful family alive, let's play a little robnoerr song, and I'll be right back. It might play through twice because I gotta go to the restroom and go downstairs for a second. So I'll be right back, and then we'll read donos and we'll get on with the rest of the show. But man, God bless you, Avarice, Asia, and your entire family, man. Riddick as well. All right, I'll be right back.
This is the robnoerr Show. It's not the Noerrdor Show. This is my favorite show because it is my show. If this was your show, you'd probably like it more. But maybe that's just because it was your show. But it's not your show. It's the robnoerr Show. This is the robnoerr Show. It's not the Noerrdor Show. This is my favorite show because it is my show. If this was your show, you'd probably like it more. But maybe that's just because it was your show. But it's not your show. It's the robnoerr Show. This is the robnoerr Show. It's not the Noerrdor Show. This is my favorite show because it is my show. If this was your show, you'd probably like it more. But maybe that's just because it was your show. But it's not your show. It's the robnoerr Show.
All right.
robnoerr Show!
Song over. Jerky. Why not? All right. By the way, thank you all for giving such support to Avarice there. Really appreciate it. Let's read some super chats, and I got to make sure I'm just reading the ones on my end. But man, I got to say, from the bottom of my heart, I really like Ryan. Good dude. And I'm happy to see that he got monetized and had a great day for his first day of monetization with some big donos that came in, and I think that's amazing. So good for him, man. And you should go check out Ryan's channel if you haven't. I'll put that link up. Normally I say that immediately following our show, but obviously we had Avarice waiting to come in, and I was really excited to talk to him. Okay. Here's Ryan's show or channel. So please check it out. Super chats. Feel free to get them in. Oh yeah, we can put this. $66.99. I mean, it is 6699. That's something. Texas Red. From that song. It's one of my favorites. I like that one. So screw all that for $20. Thanks for the $20. All SCOTUS law is a mistake ever since they screwed up Marbury v. Madison. Marbury was right, and I don't care how irreversible the damage is to the legal system to reverse America's biggest power grab. You may be right, but Ryan's correct that they are hesitant to really upset that long of precedence. Airborne Animal, $2 says, probably will argue the meaning of right. BJC, thanks so much. Lawyer Andrew Brack has been covering Birthright as Ryan seen it. He said he wasn't aware. Jess Gerald, what's up, man? Member for 13 months. Says, shout out to Avarice's new baby. Shout out to Rob for being top tier in entertainment. Thanks so much. And then gifts. 10 memberships. Thank you so much. Joseph, $20 says, God bless you, Rob, the Noerrdor family in the stream. I hope everyone's having a great night. Also, just as I wrote this, Avarice, congrats to your baby boy. God bless, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Because Racecar, $10 says, we nearly had a scheduling conflict with our D&D group last weekend. One of our guys got stuck waiting to call Tim Walls the R slur, and then Avarice ruined it by leaving early for some weird reason. Ow, there you go. AJC, $5 says, W baby Avarice. Absolutely. And Crusader, $5 says, congrats, Avarice. Once again, bud. And Riddick is an awesome name. It is an awesome name. Now, we're burdened tonight by the fact that everybody I know is streaming. Womp, womp. Boom, boom, boom. That's all right. But I do have some exciting things to tell you of things coming up. Tomorrow, I have taken an impromptu debate. I will be debating Brian Shapiro on his radio show tomorrow for about 45 minutes. That's going to be at 3:30 Eastern time. So that'll go right until around 4:30 Eastern time, and then immediately preceding that, I will be doing the extravaganza over on the Crucible's Rumble channel. So I got a busy day tomorrow. I just talked to Brian Shapiro. Now, originally I was going to debate him in America Fest, but there's some things that I'm not so sure that that's going to happen. So, 3:30 Eastern time, yes. And then 5 o'clock Eastern time on Rumble, the Crucible's Rumble channel. So, that should be good. Thursday, I'll be on that aforementioned panel. We'll be talking about the Somalia stuff. But looking forward to debate Brian Shapiro. Now, the topic is whatever the hell he wants. It's his radio show. So, I think he wants to talk about Trump bombing Venezuelan boats. I said, fine, whatever. So, I just want to be clear and upfront because I know the last time that Brian Shapiro debated Andrew that there was discrepancy about what the topic was. You will not hear me. I told him whatever you want the topic to be at the moment's fine by me. He theoretically could throw a complete curveball and be like, I want to bitch about Ron DeSantis. And I'd be like, okay, I don't care. I'm not going to complain. Whatever he wants, that's what we'll be talking about. So, okie dokie. Now, it is radio, so I got to be a little... Can't be swearing and stuff like that, which is fine. That's no problem. But then the other thing is, it's his channel, so theoretically, if he wants to mute me and all this, he could do that. But we're going to try it out and see what happens. So I'm looking forward to it. So should be interesting. And then Friday, I'm going to do a 24-hour stream. And I don't think I'm going to line up any guest. I think that I'll probably do verbal combat into the wee hours of the morning. And other than that, I think we'll open up the phone lines if people want to call in and stuff. Just messaging back there. So yeah, should be fun. So yeah, we're gonna really push hard Friday for the 24-hour show. We're gonna set a dono goal of $5,000 is what we're gonna do for 24 hours. Drunk callers will definitely be welcome for the Friday show. So if I could chum some lefties into the debate, that would be great. Whatever the cause may be. We'll accept all comers. I'm going to start at 8 a.m. Friday. So, it's a lot of money. $5,000's a lot of money, but we're going to try our best. And hopefully I'll be able to promote it. So we're going to keep promoting it. We're going to do videos promoting that. So I should probably do something like that this fine evening. That should be the goal. Given that, I might wrap up early tonight. Seeing as how I'll probably be streaming all freaking day tomorrow and definitely streaming all day Friday. Is anyone opposed to that? I was looking up. I did do a video of, oh crap. I just closed the wrong window. I did do a video of me in the hospital with my son when he was born. But I think I may have deleted it because people are weird. And I didn't want to give anyone any cause to be weird. I hesitate to show my son on camera for that very reason. You just don't know. You don't know how people are. And, today, I think it worked out. The dude apologized, but got a little chippy today, accusing me of being a bad parent or whatever. And, you don't want to give ammunition to people to be able to. My friend BX, sort of found that out when people were attacking her for her child. It's pretty crazy. I don't see that video. I don't see the video of me with my son. I'm sure I deleted it. It's probably what happened. Let's see. I'm trying to figure when it would have been on the timeline here. No, it's got to be the opposite direction. Yeah, not here. Because I got the 24-hour stream. But anyways, let's find someone to raid over to. Yeah. Whip Wheel Music streams, the right way to go. Just 5,000 from Wade. It'll just be a stream to one person. Just me streaming to Wade. And $50. Spin that wheel again. Yeah. Imagine that. 100 times. There you go. $5,000. 100 times it'll just be a stream. Exclusive. Private only. Just me and Wade Buggs. Sounds great, right? Yeah, he says I'm down. All right. I will say, extenuating circumstance tonight, but night shift, $66. Womp womp. Oh my goodness. That's got to be a record low. Oh, okay. What's Friday's date? Today's the 8th. What's today? Tuesday? So Friday is, just so you know how good I am at math. Oh, today's Monday. Is today Monday? Yeah. Friday the 12th. Okay, here we go. Promo. Take the headset off. Super chat overlay off. Ladies and gentlemen, this Friday, the 12th, December 2025, I will be doing my now annual 24-hour live stream. That's right, all the things you love about me, except magnified to go out for a full 24 hours. Now, during this, we'll be talking about news of the day. We'll be having some fun, picking up some tropes that have been done on my channel, hopefully opening up the lines to talk to people that agree and hopefully disagree with me. At the end of the night, I'll be joining a debate panel that'll probably go on for 4 or 5 hours, and we'll be doing that, and that'll get us into the wee hours of the morning. So tune in this Friday. That's going to start at 8 a.m. That is the 12th, December 12th, 2025 at 8 a.m. Eastern. And I will be going straight into Saturday the 13th until 8 a.m. Eastern. 24 hours. You're going to love it. It'll be a great show. So tune in. Can't wait to see you there. Slap chop. You'll love my nuts there. Good enough, Courtney? So, yeah, hopefully, I was staring at the screen for a second before I looked up, so apologies for that. Jake Paul fight. Yeah. Who's he fighting? Joshua? It'll be rough. We shall see. All right. Who we raiding? Someone better donate $300 to salvage this stream, huh? Or day shift's never going to let you live it down. Well, everybody's streaming. So who the hell we raiding? Is there any opinions from the Peanut Gallery? Who should we raid? Speakeasy, Cool Vic, Crucible, Mirnichuk, Fabian Liberty, JS Urban Adventure. Oh, someone donated. Look at that. Let me get back to the stream. Wade Boggs, one Disney whip song for Avarice's new baby. All right. That's fair. Enjoy. I guess I have to put my headset on to enjoy.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
I'm not going to sing like Avarice.
There's a way. We don't wanna go to war today, but the Lord of the lash says, nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all
Oh, I'm supposed to do the... I can't do it. It's not fair. It's not fair to him. It's very powerful here.
Where there's a way, there's a way.
Two-time Grammy.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a will, left, right, left, right, left. Where there's a will, left, right. The crack on the back says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more. For we are the slaves of the Dark Lord's war.
The great Wade Boggs donated that $100. Yeah, this poor kid is gonna get whip song. Riddick's kid's gonna hear Disney whip song more than's healthy. That's definitely true. Am I wearing this the wrong way? I am. What is going on? Least offensive Disney production of the last decade. Anyone else? Anyone else want any whip songs? $50 donation to spin the wheel, or $100 to choose specifically what you would like to hear. Oh, what is this? Oh, Tim Pool calling out Candace Owens. Man, God bless Avarice. Earth Avarice. Yeah, welcome to Earth Avarice. God bless you. Yep. Yeah, Eck'll sing a song or two. He gets down. You know, his favorite song is It's Lovely Day. And like, I guess at the end of the year, Spotify does your listening age. And it thinks my wife, her Spotify, it thinks she's like 68 years old or something. Pretty crazy. Yeah, Tim Pool teeing up on Candace tonight, so. All right, I've decided that we're going to raid Fabian Liberty. He's doing a debate that maybe you all enjoy. I don't know. We're hoping. Tomorrow, I'm probably going to do the call-in show, so that's going to be around noon, and then we'll transition that right into, it'll be a long call-in show because I'm probably not going to end the show at 2:30 and then start back up again at 3:30. So it'll be a call-in show, and then I'll do the debate with Brian Shapiro. Then I'll get off here, and I'll go right over to Crucible's Rumble channel. Do the extravaganza. Tomorrow it's going to be me and Andrew as opposed to me and Jake, though. So I'm actually filling in for Jake and not Andrew. So I got to get my himbo personality like, oh yeah, look at that chick. Oy vey. Or wait, no, that's Jewish. Crikey. There we go. Got it. Got to get my accents right, you know? Try to make fun of all ethnicities, religions, races, etc. So you gotta shuffle them around so much. So I will be the himbo tomorrow. That is right. This is my role tomorrow. So it'll be a long day of streaming tomorrow, and then Wednesday, Thursday, normal shows. Though Thursday I do have the panel. I'll talk about that more. And then Friday is gonna. Maybe I do need to watch Crocodile Dundee tonight. Friday is gonna be the big 24-hour show. So let's do it. Make sure you tell your friends. Bring your money. I'm trying to raise $5,000. It would be embarrassing to fall ridiculously short. It would be embarrassing. Just saying. We don't want to do that. We don't want to fall ridiculously short of the dono goal. That would be embarrassing. And everyone would laugh at me and say, why didn't you program the dono bots? So just so you know. So, all right, guys. Enjoy this raid of our good friend Fabian. Thank you so much to all my mods. Thank you to my co-host tonight, Ryan Mullally. Really appreciate it. Thank you to my editor, Black Elk. Thank you so much to everyone who donated, everyone who chatted, everyone who liked the video. Thank you to whoever this final donation is going to be that comes in. The Great Wade Boggs gave $100 there. But I know someone's going to donate at least $20 here at the end. Oh, right on time. Our good friend Zach Gelpy, $20. Thank you so much. Says, what a great day. The Noerverse expanded by 1. Congratulations, Avarice. Thank you, Zach. Yeah, it is a great day. Thank you so much, man. Zach's going to be the winner. Zach's going to be the last dono. Remember, you get bragging rights if you're the last $20 or higher donor of the night. God bless Avarice. God bless his wife, and God bless his son. I couldn't be happier for them. So it's a truly great day. Nah, I'm not going to raid Andrew. Only because he has like 7,000 people watching, so I don't know that the 50 that are watching me will make much of a difference. But you're more than welcome to go over to Andrew's channel. We're going to raid over to Fabian Scott over there. So he's doing a debate. Hopefully you'll enjoy that. If not, feel free. Head over to the Crucible. He's covering the Nick Fuentes stuff. Nick! Covering that. So, and the last thing, please keep the memory at this time. Never forget the memory of Charlie Kirk. What a great man he was. say some prayers for his family, for what they went through with the assassination, and then his name being smeared through the mud afterwards. So God bless you all. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow around noon. And as always, have a good one. Last don't know when.
Only in America is it possible to say, you know what, I don't like the way the country is going, and to do something about it. Take that risk. Take that leap of faith. Stay involved. Trust God and act obediently. Romans 12:2 verse. That God will use all things for good for those who love him. It's bigger than you. I want you to remember that. It is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. You are here to make somebody else's life better, the pursuit of liberty and freedom. You know what gives me strength? The hundreds of thousands of you that say, Charlie, keep going.
1 Corinthians 5 and 15. So that's all pretty amazing evidence, not just intra-biblical evidence, but extra-biblical evidence that Jesus Christ was a real person. He lived a perfect life. He was crucified, died, and rose on the third day, and he is Lord and God of all.